The old grandfather clock in the hallway was the heartbeat of my home. Tick tock, tock, tick tock. It was a slow, heavy sound. It was the sound of time passing, of memories settling like dust on the mahogany furniture. My late husband, Thomas, had bought that clock 40 years ago. He used to say that as long as it kept ticking, the heart of our family would keep beating. I stood in the centre of the kitchen. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rosemary, garlic, and roasting beef. It was Sunday. Sunday meant family. Sunday meant my children were coming home. I wiped my hands on my floral apron. My hands were wrinkled now. The skin was thin, like parchment paper. The blue veins mapped out the journey of my 68 years. These hands had changed diapers. They had graded thousands of history essays. They had held Thomas's hand as he took his last breath 5 years ago. Now they were trembling slightly, just a little. I told myself it was just excitement. Mark and Sarah were coming, both of them, together. That was rare these days. Mark was always so busy with his investments, his meetings, his big deals, that he could never quite explain to me. And Sarah. Sarah was always chasing the next shiny thing, the next party, the next circle of friends who would validate her existence. But today, they were coming to see me. I walked over to the oven. I bent down carefully. My knees creaked. A sharp little pain shot up my lower back. I ignored it. I opened the oven door. The heat rushed out, flushing my face. The pot roast was perfect. The potatoes were golden brown. The carrots were glazed just the way Sarah liked them. Perfect, I whispered to the empty room. Everything has to be perfect. I looked around the kitchen. This house was too big for one person. I knew that. It was a sprawling Victorian estate that Thomas and I had bought when the children were small. It had 5 bedrooms. It had a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. It had a garden where the roses still bloomed, stubborn and wild, just like Thomas's spirit. People told me to sell it. Downsize, Anna, my friends would say. Get a nice condo, something with an elevator. I always smiled and shook my head. How could I leave? Every corner of this house held a piece of my life. The height chart penciled onto the doorframe of the pantry, the scratch on the hardwood floor where Mark had dropped his first toy truck, the window seat where I used to read bedtime stories until my voice went hoarse. Selling this house would be like selling my memories. It would be like losing Thomas all over again. The doorbell rang. It wasn't the cheerful chime I was used to. It was a long, insistent press. I smoothed my hair. I took off my apron and hung it on the hook. I walked to the front door, my heart doing a little skip of joy. I opened the heavy oak door. "Mom!" Sarah exclaimed. She didn't hug me. Not immediately. She stood there, scanning me. Her eyes were sharp, critical. She looked at my hair, my dress, my shoes. Sarah was beautiful in that manufactured way that money buys. Her hair was a perfect blonde bob. Her designer handbag was worth more than my first car. "Hello, darling," I said, opening my arms. She stepped in and gave me a quick, airy peck on the cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and something metallic. Cold air rushed in behind her. Mark followed. He was on his phone, of course. He held up a finger, signalling me to wait. He was frowning. Mark had Thomas's jawline, but he didn't have his father's warm eyes. Mark's eyes were always calculating, always looking for an exit or an opportunity. "Sell," Mark barked into the phone. "I said sell it now. I don't care about the margin. Just liquidate." He hung up and shoved the phone into the pocket of his tailored suit. He looked at me. He forced a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Hi, Mom. You look tired." That was his greeting. Not "I missed you." Not "How are you?" just an observation of my frailty. I'm fine, Mark, I lied, stepping back to let him in. Just been cooking all day. Come in, dinner is ready. They walked into the hallway. They didn't wipe their feet. I watched as Mark's polished leather shoes left a faint, wet print on the rug. I didn't say anything. I was just a mother, happy to have her chicks back in the nest. We sat at the dining table. The dining room was grand. The chandelier above us cast a warm, golden glow. I had set the table with the good china, the Royal Doulton set that we only used for Christmas and special occasions. So, Mark said, cutting into the beef, this place, it's really falling apart, isn't it? I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. What do you mean, dear? I just had the roof inspected last month. Mark gestured vaguely at the ceiling with his knife. The vibe, Mum, it feels musty, old, and the heating, it's freezing in here. I keep the thermostat at 68, I said softly. It's comfortable for me. It's drafty, Sarah chimed in. She pulled her cashmere cardigan tighter around herself. Really, Mum, you can't tell me you're actually happy here, alone, in this mausoleum. The word stung. Mausoleum. A tomb. This is my home, Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Your father and I built a life here. Dad is gone, Mum, Mark said bluntly. He didn't look up from his plate. He was eating quickly, mechanically, as if fueling an engine. You need to be realistic. You're 68. What happens if you fall? What happens if the boiler explodes? The boiler is fine, I insisted. But a seed of doubt was planted. Was it fine? I hadn't checked it in a while. Suddenly, a tickle started in the back of my throat. I tried to suppress it. I didn't want to show weakness. Not now, not when they were scrutinizing me like a bad investment. But the tickle grew. I coughed. Once. Twice. It was just a dry throat. Maybe a bit of dust. But then I coughed again. Harder. I reached for my water glass. My hand shook. That treacherous tremor again. Water sloshed over the rim and onto the white tablecloth. Mum! Sarah shrieked. It wasn't a scream of concern. It was a scream of panic. I'm fine, I wheezed, patting my chest with a napkin. Just went down the wrong pipe. Mark dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the china. He stood up. He walked over to me, looming tall and broad. Look at you, he said, his voice low and serious. You're shaking. You can't even hold a glass of water. I am fine, Mark, I said, my voice rising. I felt tears pricking my eyes, not from the cough, but from the shame. I didn't want to be the frail old woman. I wanted to be the mother who took care of them. You're not fine, Sarah said, standing up too. She walked around the table and put a hand on my shoulder. Her nails dug in slightly. We've been talking, Mum, Mark and I. My heart went cold. Talking? About what? Mark exchanged a look with Sarah, a look I couldn't decipher. It was a look of shared secrets, a look of conspiracy. We're worried about you, Mark said. He sat down in the chair next to me. He took my hand. His hand was warm, but his grip was firm, too firm. This house, it's dangerous for you right now, especially with winter coming. Dangerous? I laughed nervously. Don't be silly. I've lived here for 30 years. The heating system, Mark interrupted. I checked it while I was in the basement earlier. The pipes are corroded, Mum. There's a carbon monoxide risk, a serious risk. I stared at him. You went into the basement. I had to check, he said smoothly. I'm the man of the house now, aren't I? I have to look out for you. The whole system needs to be ripped out and replaced. It's going to be a mess. Dust, noise, freezing temperatures. You can't stay here while they do the work. My mind raced. Carbon monoxide, corroded pipes. I didn't know anything about plumbing, Thomas always handled that. If Mark said it was bad, it must be bad. He was smart. He was successful. Why would he lie? But where would I go? I asked, my voice small. I can't go to a hotel alone. It's too expensive. Sarah smiled. It was a bright, practiced smile. That's the best part, Mum. We found the perfect place, just for a few days, maybe a week, just until the work is done. Where? I asked. Green Willows, Sarah said. The name rolled off her tongue like honey. It's a luxury wellness retreat. It's not a hospital or anything dreadful like that. It's like a spa. They have gardens, they have gourmet food, they have medical staff on standby, just in case. A retreat? I frowned. That sounds expensive. We're paying for it, Mark said quickly. It's our treat, a vacation for you. You deserve a break, Mom. You've been working so hard to keep this place running. Let us take care of you for once. I looked from Mark to Sarah. Their faces were full of concern. Their eyes were wide and pleading. For the first time in years, I felt like they truly saw me. They weren't asking for money. They weren't complaining about their lives. They were worried about me. They wanted to fix my house. They wanted to send me on a vacation. A wave of gratitude washed over me, drowning out the little voice of intuition in the back of my head. That little voice was whispering, "Why now? Why the rush?" But I silenced it. I was a mother. My default setting was to trust. Just a week? I asked. Just a week, Mark promised. He squeezed my hand. 7 days. By the time you come back, the house will be warm, safe, and good as new. Okay, I whispered. Okay, I'll go. Sarah clapped her hands together. Wonderful. This is going to be so good for you, Mum. I'll go upstairs and help you pack. Now? I asked, startled. But we haven't finished dinner. No time, Mark said, checking his watch again. The intake office at Green Willows closes at 8. We need to get you there tonight so the contractors can start first thing in the morning. Tonight? I looked at my pot roast. It was barely touched. The gravy was starting to congeal. But, come on, Mum, Sarah urged, pulling me up from my chair. Don't be difficult. We're doing this for you. I let them lead me. I felt like a leaf being swept away by a sudden gust of wind. We went upstairs to my bedroom. Sarah opened my closet. She started pulling out clothes, not my favourite comfortable sweaters, but the nice things, the things I rarely wore. You need to look your best, she said, tossing a silk blouse onto the bed. There are some very elite people at Green Willows. You might make some friends. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling dazed. My heart was beating too fast. Mark appeared in the doorway. He was holding a folder, a thick blue folder. Mum, he said, while Sarah packs, we just need to sign a few things. Standard paperwork for the facility and the authorization for the contractors. He walked over and placed the folder on the nightstand. He clicked a pen and handed it to me. I need my reading glasses, I said, reaching for the drawer. Don't worry about the fine print, Mark said, gently blocking my hand. It's all standard legalese. Liability waivers for the spa. Permission for the workers to enter the house. Trust me, I read it all. It's fine. He pointed to the line at the bottom of the page. Just sign here. I looked at the paper. The text was a blur of black ink. Without my glasses, it looked like marching ants. I squinted. I could see the words authorization and property. Mark, I hesitated. I usually like to read. Mum, Mark sighed, a sound of deep frustration. Do you not trust me? I am your son. I am trying to save your life from carbon monoxide poisoning, and you're arguing about paperwork. No, I said quickly. I trust you. Of course I trust you. The guilt hit me hard. How could I question him? He was doing all this for me. I took the pen. My hand was still trembling. I pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed. Anna P. Sterling. I signed the first page. Mark flipped it. Sign here. Anna P. Sterling. I signed again and again. There were so many pages. My hand cramped. What is this one? I asked, pointing to a document that looked different, denser. Insurance, Mark said smoothly. Just in case you trip up at the spa. We want to make sure you're covered here. I signed it. I didn't know it then. I didn't know that my signature was the key that unlocked the cage. I didn't know that with every stroke of the pen, I was signing away my past, my security, and my sanctuary. I was signing away Thomas's legacy. Done, Mark said, snapping the folder shut. He looked relieved. Triumphant, almost. Great, let's get you in the car. The drive to Green Willows was quiet. I sat in the back seat of Mark's luxury sedan. The leather was cold against my legs. I watched the city lights blur past. We drove out of the city into the suburbs and then further towards the edge of the countryside. The roads became darker. Finally, we turned fast through a large iron gate. A sign was illuminated by a spotlight. Green Willows Senior Living and Rehabilitation. It didn't look like a spa. It looked like a hospital trying to disguise itself as a hotel. The building was brick, large and imposing. The windows were dark. Mark parked the car. We're here, he said. They walked me to the reception. The lobby was clean, smelling of lemon polish and antiseptic. A woman in a nurse's uniform sat behind the desk. She smiled, but her eyes were tired. Checking in Mrs. Sterling? She asked. Yes, Mark said, for the short-term stay. Right, the woman said. She typed something into her computer. Room 304. Sarah hugged me then. It was tighter than before. It's just for a week, Mom, she whispered. Relax, enjoy yourself. We'll handle everything at the house. Mark patted my shoulder. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Get some rest. But wait, I said, panic rising in my chest. Aren't you staying to get me settled? Can't, Mark said, checking his watch. Early meeting tomorrow. You're in good hands, Mum. And just like that, they were gone. I watched the automatic doors slide shut behind them. I saw the tail lights of Mark's car flare red in the darkness and then fade away. I stood there, clutching my small suitcase. I felt small. I felt foolish. I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach, heavier than the pot roast I never ate. This way, Mrs. Sterling, the nurse said gently. Let's get you to bed. I followed her down the long, silent corridor. The floor was linoleum, shiny and hard. Tick, tock. There was a clock on the wall here too, but it was digital. It didn't have a heartbeat. It just silently flipped numbers. 28. My first hour at Green Willows had begun. I told myself it was fine. It was just a week, just 7 days. I could do this. I would rest, I would get healthy, and I would go home to a warm house. I didn't know that home was already a word that belonged to the past. The first night was the hardest. The bed was too narrow. The sheets were too stiff. The pillow smelled of industrial detergent. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the facility. A cough from the next room, the squeak of a nurse's cart, the distant hum of an elevator. I closed my eyes and tried to picture my bedroom. The blue curtains, the oak dresser, the picture of Thomas on the nightstand. I'll be back soon, Thomas, I whispered into the dark. Just hold on, I'll be back in a week. The week started slowly. Day 1, I explored the gardens. They were nice, but small. Nothing like my wild roses. I met a few other residents. They were polite, but distant. Most of them seemed lost in their own worlds, drifting like ships in a fog. Day 2. I waited for Mark's call. He said he would call. I sat by the phone in the common room for 3 hours. It didn't ring. He's busy, I told myself. He's dealing with the contractors. Day 3, Sarah didn't call either. I tried to call them. Straight to voicemail. Both of them. Hi, this is Mark. Leave a message. Hey, it's Sarah. I'm out living my best life. Leave a beep. It's Mum, I said into the phone, my voice trembling. Just checking in. The food here is fine, but I miss my own cooking. How is the heating system coming along? Call me back. Day 4, silence. Day 5, anxiety began to gnaw at me. I asked the nurse if there were any messages for me. No, honey, she said, looking at me with pity. No messages. Day 6. I started to pack. I wanted to be ready. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow was the 1 week mark. Day 7. I woke up early. I dressed in the same clothes I arrived in. I sat on the edge of the bed, my suitcase by my feet. I waited. Morning turned into afternoon. The sun moved across the floor. The lunch cart came and went. I didn't eat. I didn't want to miss them. Afternoon turned into evening. The shadows grew long. I went to the front desk. Has anyone called for Anna Sterling? I asked. I tried to sound authoritative, like the teacher I used to be, but my voice cracked. The receptionist, a different one this time, a young man with a kind face, checked the log. No, ma'am, nothing. Can I use the phone? I dialed Mark again. Voicemail. I dialed Sarah. Voicemail. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Something was wrong. Maybe the repairs were taking longer. Maybe there was an accident. Is there anyone else you can call? The young man asked gently. I thought for a moment. My friends? No, I didn't want to worry them. Then I remembered. Mrs. Gable, my neighbour. She lived directly across the street. She was a nosy woman, always peeking through her curtains, but she had a landline and she never left her house. I dialed the number from memory. Ring, ring, ring. Hello? Mrs. Gable's voice was sharp. Martha, it's Anna. Anna Sterling. Anna. She sounded shocked. My goodness, where are you? We've been so worried. The truck, the noise. I'm at a retreat, I said. Mark sent me here while they fix the heating. Tell me, Martha, are the contractors still there? Is the van still in the driveway? There was a long silence on the other end of the line, a silence that felt heavy. Martha? Anna? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Honey, there are no contractors. What? There are no plumbers, she said. There's a sign, Anna, a big red sign on the lawn. My blood ran cold. What does the sign say? It says, sold, Martha said, and, oh God, Anna, yesterday, a big truck came, rapid clean-out services. They were throwing things into it, furniture, boxes. I saw Thomas's armchair. The world stopped. The lobby of the nursing home spun. The lemon smell became suffocating. The ticking of the digital clock became a deafening roar. Thomas's armchair. Sold? I whispered. But I didn't. And then I remembered the folder, the blue folder, the standard paperwork, the insurance, sign here, sign here. I had signed it. I had signed it all away. Anna, are you there? Martha was shouting now. The phone slipped from my hand. It dangled by its cord, swinging back and forth. My legs gave way. I didn't feel the impact when my knees hit the floor. I didn't feel the young receptionist grabbing my shoulders. All I felt was a sharp, tearing pain in my chest. A pain so intense it eclipsed the heartbreak. It was as if my heart, realizing it had no home to return to, had decided to simply stop beating. Help! The receptionist yelled. We need a medic. She's crashing. Blackness rushed in from the edges of my vision. As the lights faded, I didn't see Mark or Sarah. I saw my house. I saw the empty space where Thomas's chair used to be, and I heard the echo of Mark's voice. Just for a week, Mum. Just for a week. The first thing I heard was the beeping. Beep, beep, beep. It was a rhythmic, artificial sound. It was slower than the grandfather clock, but faster than my own heartbeat. I tried to open my eyes. My eyelids felt like they were weighted down with lead coins. The light was harsh, fluorescent, and unforgiving. It burned. I blinked, tears forming in the corners of my eyes, washing away the grit of sleep. She's coming around, a voice said. A male voice. Unfamiliar. Finally, another voice replied. A woman. Impatient. Sharp. I knew that voice. Sarah. I forced my eyes open. The blur resolved into shapes and then into faces. I was in a hospital room. Not the cosy, fake hotel room at Green Willows. This was a real hospital. Sterile white walls, plastic tubes, the smell of iodine and floor wax. A doctor in a white coat stood over me, checking a monitor, and behind him, near the door, stood Mark and Sarah. They looked annoyed. Mark was checking his phone. Sarah was picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. They didn't look like children whose mother had just collapsed. They looked like travellers stuck in an airport delay. Mrs. Sterling, the doctor said gently. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Can you hear me? I tried to speak. My throat was sandpaper. Water, I croaked. The doctor held a cup with a straw to my lips. The water was lukewarm, but it tasted like life itself. I drank greedily. Easy now, he said. He pulled the cup away. I'm Dr. Evans. You're at St. Jude's Hospital. You had a cardiac event yesterday evening. A heart attack? I whispered. The fear fluttered in my chest like a trapped moth. Not exactly, Dr. Evans said. He glanced at Mark and Sarah, then back to me. We call it stress-induced cardiomyopathy. The common term is broken heart syndrome. It mimics a heart attack. Your heart muscle was stunned by a surge of adrenaline and grief. Broken heart syndrome. The diagnosis hit me harder than any physical blow. It wasn't just a metaphor. My heart had literally broken under the weight of the betrayal. I looked past the doctor. I looked at my children. Mark finally pocketed his phone. He stepped forward. He didn't look guilty. He looked practical. He wore his business face, the one he used when he was explaining why an investment failed. You gave us quite a scare, Mum, Mark said. His tone was flat. The staff at Green Willows called us. We had to drive all the way back. The house, I whispered. My voice was weak, but my mind was sharpening. The fog of the collapse was lifting, leaving behind a jagged, painful clarity. Martha told me. The house, Mark sighed. He looked at Sarah. Sarah rolled her eyes, a gesture so familiar from her teenage years that it made my stomach churn. We didn't want to tell you like this, Sarah said. She walked to the foot of the bed. She didn't touch me. We wanted to wait until you were settled, until you were stronger. You sold it, I said. It wasn't a question. We liquidated an asset, Mark corrected me. He used the word asset like it was a dirty rag he had disposed of. Mum, look at you. You're in a hospital bed. You collapsed because of stress. That house was killing you. It was too big, too much work. The maintenance alone was a fortune. It was my home, I said, tears spilling over. It was your father's home. Dad is dead, Mark said coldly, and you are alive. We had to make a decision, an executive decision. You tricked me, I said. The anger was starting to simmer beneath the grief. You said it was for a week. You said it was for repairs. We lied, Sarah said. She shrugged. Because you're stubborn, Mom. If we told you the truth, that we were putting you in our home and selling the place, you would have fought us. You would have cried. You would have refused to sign the papers. So we made it easier for you, Mark added. We handled the heavy lifting. We used the power of attorney you signed to finalise the sale. It's a done deal, Mum. The new owners take possession next week. The money is in the bank. My money? I asked. Mark hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. The family's money. We're managing it for you. Green Willows is expensive, you know. That level of care costs a fortune. We're using the proceeds to pay for your stay there, for your permanent stay. Permanent. The word hung in the air like smoke. The trap had snapped shut. There was no repairs, no renovation, no coming home. I want to go back, I said, struggling to sit up. The wires attached to my chest tugged. I want to go to my house. I want my things. Your things are gone, Mom, Sarah said. She sounded bored now. We hired a clearance company. They took everything. The old furniture, the dusty books, the junk in the attic. It's all gone. We kept a few photos for you, of course, but the rest, it was just clutter. Thomas's chair, my books, the height chart on the pantry door. You threw it away, I gasped. 40 years of life, in the trash. It's just stuff, Mum, Sarah said, checking her manicure. Stop being so dramatic. You don't need a dining table for 12 people. You eat on a tray now. I looked at Dr. Evans. He was staring at the floor, uncomfortable. He was a doctor, not a referee. He checked the monitor one last time. I'll give you some privacy, he muttered, and slipped out of the room. Now it was just us, the mother and the wolves she had raised. Why? I asked. I looked at Mark, my firstborn, the boy I had nursed through fevers, the boy I had taught to ride a bike. Why are you doing this? Mark walked over to the window. He looked out at the parking lot. He didn't look at me. I needed the liquidity, he said softly. My firm, we took a hit, a bad one. I was leveraged too high. If I didn't come up with cash fast, I was going to lose everything. My house, my car, my reputation. So you took mine? I asked. He turned around. His face was twisted in a mixture of shame and defiance. You don't use it, Mom. You're sitting on a gold mine in a rising real estate market, just dusting old picture frames. It was selfish of you to keep it when your children are struggling. Struggling? I looked at his Italian suit. I looked at Sarah's diamond earrings. You don't look like you're struggling. You don't understand the pressure, Sarah snapped. The lifestyle we have to maintain, the connections. It costs money to be someone, Mum. You wouldn't get it. You were happy being a teacher, a nobody. A nobody. I closed my eyes. The pain in my chest was dull now, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. I realised then that I didn't know these people. Somewhere along the way, between the piano lessons and the private schools and the indulgences Thomas and I had given them, they had lost their souls. Or maybe we had failed to give them one. Get out, I whispered. Mum, don't be like that, Mark said, stepping closer. We're doing this for you. You'll be safe at Green Willows. You won't have to worry about bills or repairs or... Get out! I screamed. It wasn't a loud scream. It was a raspy, broken sound, but it had enough force to stop him in his tracks. Mark stiffened. He buttoned his jacket. Fine, he said. The doctor says you can be discharged tomorrow. We'll have a car take you back to Green Willows. We've already moved your things to a different room, a more suitable room for long-term care. We're busy, Mum, Sarah added. We have to close on a new apartment in the city, a penthouse. You'd hate it, too high up, but we'll visit, eventually. Don't bother, I said. I turned my head away. I stared at the blank white wall. I heard their footsteps retreating, the click-clack of Sarah's heels, the heavy thud of Mark's shoes. The door opened and closed. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a life dismantled. I lay there for a long time. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears. I just stared at the wall. I thought about Thomas. I thought about how he used to say, "Anna, money is just paper. Character is gold." Our children had plenty of paper, but they were bankrupt of gold. The next day, a transport van came for me. Not Mark's sedan, a white van with the Green Willows logo on the side. The driver was a cheerful man who hummed along to the radio. He wheeled me out in a wheelchair. I felt fragile. I felt old. For the first time in my life, I felt like a victim. We drove back to the facility. When we arrived, the young receptionist, the one who had caught me when I fell, wasn't there. It was the stern woman again. "Welcome back, Mrs. Sterling," she said, without looking up. "We've moved your luggage to room 104, down the hall to the left." Room 304 had been on the 3rd floor. It had a view of the garden. It had a private bathroom. Room 104 was on the ground floor. I wheeled myself down the corridor. The air down here smelled different. It smelled of boiled cabbage and old age. The lighting was dimmer. I pushed the door open. It was a shared room. There were 2 beds. One was occupied by a woman who was sound asleep, her mouth open, snoring softly. The other bed was empty. It was stripped bare, waiting for linens. My suitcase, my small, lonely suitcase, was sitting on the plastic chair next to the empty bed. I stood up from the wheelchair, my legs shaking. I sat on the mattress. It was thin. This was it. This was my life now. A shared room, a plastic chair, a view of the parking lot brick wall. I opened my suitcase. I needed to see something familiar. I needed an anchor. My clothes were there, my toiletry bag and my purse. I opened the purse. I checked the compartments. My cash was gone. Mark must have taken it for safekeeping. My credit cards were gone. Panic rose in my throat again. They had stripped me of everything. I was completely dependent on them. I was a prisoner in a cage they paid for. I dug deeper into the purse, into the small zippered pocket in the lining, a pocket I rarely used. My fingers brushed against something stiff, small, rectangular. I pulled it out. It was a business card. The edges were worn and soft. The white paper had turned a creamy yellow with age. The ink was faded but legible. Arthur J. Pennyworth, attorney at law, estates, trusts, and civil litigation. I held the card in both hands. I remembered the day Arthur gave it to me. It was at Thomas's funeral. Arthur had been Thomas's best friend since college. They played chess together every Thursday for 30 years. Arthur was a grumpy, cynical man who hated modern technology and loved old Scotch. At the funeral, he had taken my hand. He looked at Mark and Sarah, who were already arguing about the catering bill in the corner. "Anna," Arthur had whispered, his voice gravelly and low. Thomas was a smart man. He knew people. He knew everyone's nature. He had pressed the card into my palm. "If the day ever comes when you need a friend who isn't blood, call me. There are things Thomas put in place. Things only I know about. But you have to ask. Things Thomas put in place. I had forgotten about that. In the grief of losing Thomas, I had put the card away and forgotten it. I thought I didn't need a lawyer. I had my children. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. It sounded loud in the quiet room. The woman in the next bed stirred, snorted, and went back to sleep. I looked at the card. It was my only lifeline. But did it still work? Arthur was old. He must be 70 by now. Was he even practicing? Was he even alive? And even if he was, what could he do? I had signed the papers. I had given Mark the power. I was destitute. I sat there for an hour, holding the card. The sun began to set, casting long prison bar shadows across the floor. A nurse came in with a tray. "Dinner, Mrs. Sterling," she said cheerfully. She placed a plastic tray on the bedside table. Pureed potatoes, grey meat, green jelly. "I'm not hungry," I said. "You have to eat to keep your strength up," she said, tapping the tray. "Doctor's orders." She left. I looked at the food. It was fuel. Disgusting, bland fuel. I picked up the spoon. My hand trembled, but I forced it to stop. Mark thinks I'm weak, I thought. Sarah thinks I'm a nobody. I took a bite of the potatoes. I swallowed. It tasted like chalk. They think I'm going to die here. Quietly, conveniently. I took another bite. They think they've won. I ate the whole meal, every scrap. I drank the water. I wiped my mouth. Then I stood up. I walked to the door. I looked left and right. The hallway was empty. The nurses were at the station laughing about a TV show. I walked to the payphone on the wall near the exit. It was an old relic, just like me. I didn't have any coins. Mark had taken my cash. But I remembered the collect call number. 1-800-COLLECT. Did that still work? I dialed. I punched in the number on the business card. Ring, ring. My heart hammered. Ring. "Pennyworth Law," a gruff voice answered. It wasn't a secretary. It was him. He sounded tired. "I have a collect call from Anna," the automated voice said. There was a pause. A silence that stretched for a heartbeat. "I accept," Arthur's voice boomed. The line clicked open. "Anna," he said. His voice wasn't tired anymore. It was alert, sharp. "Anna Sterling." "Arthur," I whispered. I leaned my forehead against the cold metal of the phone box. "It's me." "I've been waiting for this call," Arthur said. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about the weather. He knew. Somehow, he knew. 5 years, Anna. I've been waiting. "They took everything, Arthur," I said, my voice breaking. "The house, the furniture. They put me in a home." "I know," Arthur said. "I saw the sale listing. I saw the transfer of title. Mark didn't waste any time." "I signed the papers," I confessed. "I didn't read them. I trusted him." "I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid, Anna. You're a mother," Arthur said firmly. "Thomas knew this might happen. He hoped it wouldn't. He prayed it wouldn't. But he prepared for it." "Prepared?" "Where are you?" Arthur asked. "Green Willows, room 104. "Sit tight," Arthur said. I heard the sound of a chair scraping against a floor. I heard the jingle of keys. "I'm coming." "And Anna?" "Yes." "Stop crying," he said. "Tears won't get your house back, but what I have in my safe might get you something better." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Arthur said, and I could hear the grim smile in his voice, "it's time to stop being the victim. Thomas left you a sword, Anna. You just didn't know you were holding it." He hung up. I stood there in the hallway, the receiver buzzing in my hand. A sword. I hung up the phone. I walked back to my room. I looked at the grey walls. They didn't look like prison walls anymore. They looked like a bunker, a place to regroup. I sat on the bed. I wasn't just a discarded old woman anymore. I was Anna Sterling. I was the wife of Thomas Sterling, and I had a weapon. I waited for Arthur, and for the first time in a week, the ticking of the clock didn't sound like time running out. It sounded like a countdown. Arthur arrived 40 minutes later. He didn't look like a saviour. He looked like a storm cloud squeezed into a trench coat. He was a short man, thick around the middle, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and left out in the rain. He walked into the nursing home with a heavy, rhythmic thump of his cane, ignoring the visiting hours over sign as if it were a suggestion for lesser mortals. He found me in the common room. I was sitting by the unlit fireplace, my hands folded in my lap, watching the dust motes dance in the beam of the security light. He didn't say hello. He pulled up a vinyl chair, turned it backward, and sat down with a groan. He placed a battered leather briefcase on the floor. "You look terrible, Anna," he grunted. "Thank you, Arthur," I smiled faintly. "You know how to charm a lady. I'm not here to charm you. I'm here to represent you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a silver flask. He glanced at the nurse's station down the hall, then poured a splash into 2 plastic water cups he must have swiped from the dispenser. "Drink," he ordered, sliding 1 cup toward me. "It's Scotch, single malt, better than whatever swill they're pumping into your veins." I took a sip. It burned. It tasted of peat and smoke and old libraries. It tasted like Thomas. Tears pricked my eyes again, but I blinked them away. "You said Thomas left me a sword," I said, putting the cup down. "I'm ready to see it." Arthur nodded. He hauled his briefcase onto his lap and clicked the brass latches. Snap, snap. The sound was loud in the quiet room. He pulled out a file, not a thin blue folder like the one Mark had given me. This was a thick, leather-bound binder. "First," Arthur said, "the bad news. I pulled the property records on your way over. Mark didn't just sell the house, Anna. He dumped it." "Dumped it? Market value of the estate is 1.5 million, Arthur recited, putting on his reading glasses. "Mark sold it to a cash buyer, some shell company developer, for 800,000. A quick close, no inspections, cash on the barrelhead." I gasped. 800,000. He threw away half the value. "He was desperate," Arthur said. "He needed cash fast, to pay off his margin calls, to cover his debts. He sacrificed the asset for speed. It's what amateurs do." "And the money?" I asked. "Where is it?" "In an account under his name, mostly. He transferred a small stipend to the nursing home to cover your basic care for 2 years. The rest? He and Sarah are splitting it." My stomach churned. My life's work. Thomas's legacy. Sold for pennies on the dollar so my son could cover his gambling debts. And my daughter could buy handbags. "Can we sue?" I asked. "Can we get the house back?" Arthur looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "We can. We can file for elder abuse. We can argue you were under duress when you signed the power of attorney. We can tie this up in court for 5 years, but the house is gone, Anna. The developer will gut it by next week, and Mark, he'll spend that money before a judge even bangs a gavel." I slumped in my chair. "So I've lost." "No," Arthur said. A slow, wolfish grin spread across his face. "That's where you're wrong. You see, Mark made a mistake. A classic mistake. He assumed the house was the fortune." Arthur tapped the leather binder. "Thomas knew Mark was weak," Arthur said softly. "He knew Sarah was vain. He loved them, but he didn't trust them with money, and he terrified that one day, after he was gone, they would come for you." "He never told me," I whispered. "He didn't want you to worry. He wanted you to think you just had the house and his pension, but Thomas was an investor, Anna, a brilliant one. He didn't just save pennies, he bought stocks in the 80s, tech stocks, Apple, Microsoft. He bought land in places nobody cared about until they did." Arthur opened the binder. He turned it toward me. I looked at the balance sheet. There were a lot of zeros. "This," Arthur said, pointing to the bottom line, "is the Sterling Family Trust. It's an irrevocable trust. It has been sitting there, growing, compounding, waiting. I stared at the number. $5 million. $5 million, I choked out. Give or take, Arthur said, and here is the kicker. The trust has a trigger clause, clause 4B. He pointed to a paragraph of dense legal text. The trust assets are to remain frozen and secret, Arthur read, unless and until the primary beneficiary, that's you, Anna, is displaced from the marital home, or if the marital home is sold without the beneficiary's full, lucid consent. Arthur looked up, his eyes twinkling. By selling the house behind your back, Mark pulled the trigger. He unlocked the vault, but he unlocked it for you, not for himself. He doesn't even know this money exists. I sat back, my head spinning. I was rich. I was wealthy beyond anything I had ever imagined. I could leave this nursing home tonight. I could buy a villa in France. I could hire a team of lawyers to crush Mark and Sarah into dust. I can take it back, I said, my voice gaining strength. I can take everything back. You can, Arthur agreed. We can walk out of here. We can freeze Mark's accounts. We can expose them for the frauds they are. We can put them in jail for fraud. I looked at the scotch in my cup. I thought about Mark's face when he lied to me about the heating. I thought about Sarah's boredom as I lay in the hospital bed. If I sued them now, they would hate me. They would play the victim. They would say I was a vindictive old woman. They would never learn. They would never understand the gravity of what they had done. They needed to feel it. They needed to understand what it meant to be powerless, to be displaced, to be at the mercy of a landlord. No, I said slowly. Arthur raised an eyebrow. No? I don't want to sue them. Not yet. Anna. They left you to rot, Arthur growled. You owe them nothing. I know, I said, but if I just take the money and run, I'm just a rich widow. I want to be a lesson. I looked at Arthur. You said Mark and Sarah are moving to a new apartment. Arthur nodded. He pulled a piece of paper from the file. I did some digging. They've applied for a lease at the Heritage. It's a new ultra-luxury building downtown, penthouse suite. The rent is $12,000 a month. They're using the house money to pay the deposit and the first year's rent. The Heritage, I mused. Is it owned by a corporation? A holding company, Arthur said. They are currently looking for investors. The building is brand new. A plan began to form in my mind. It was cold. It was calculating. It was something Thomas would have come up with over a chessboard. Arthur, I said, how quickly can we access the trust funds? Immediately. I am the sole trustee. Good. I leaned forward. The tremors in my hands had stopped. I want to buy the building. Arthur blinked. He actually dropped his pen. The building? The whole building? No, I corrected myself. Maybe that's too much. I want to buy the unit they are renting, and the one above it, and the one below it. I want to buy the management rights for that floor. Actually, if the holding company is looking for investors, can we buy a controlling stake? Can we become the landlord? Arthur stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow, wide smile broke across his face. It was a terrifying smile. We can form a limited liability company, he said, his mind already racing. An anonymous LLC. We can buy the controlling interest in the property management. We can be the ones who approve their lease. We can be the ones who hold their security deposit. Phoenix, I said. What? The company name, I said. Phoenix LLC. Because I'm rising from the ashes. Arthur chuckled. He poured himself another splash of scotch. Phoenix LLC. I like it. So let me get this straight. You want to stay here, in this dump, while you own the roof over their heads. I'll stay here for a while, I said. I looked around the room. It was drab, it was depressing, but it was the perfect cover. If I leave, they'll get suspicious. They need to think I'm helpless. They need to think I'm exactly where they put me. It will be hard, Arthur warned, living a double life. I've been a mother for 35 years, Arthur, I said dryly. I've lived a double life my whole adulthood, the one where I'm happy and the one where I'm terrified for my children. This will be easy. Arthur closed the binder. He stood up. He looked at me with a newfound respect. I'll draw up the papers tonight, he said. By Monday morning, you will be the majority shareholder of the entity that owns the heritage. Mark and Sarah will be signing their lease with you. They just won't know it. Make sure the lease is strict, I said. Very strict. No late payments, no noise. Strict adherence to the rules. Oh, it will be ironclad, Arthur promised. And Anna? Yes? Welcome back to the game. He turned and walked out into the night, his cane tapping a rhythmic victory march. I sat there for a long time. The night nurse came in to turn off the lights. Time for bed, Mrs. Sterling, she said, her voice dripping with that condescending sweetness people reserve for children and the elderly. Do you need help getting to your room? I stood up. I straightened my spine. I felt taller. No, thank you, I said clearly. I can find my own way. I walked back to room 104. I looked at the sleeping woman in the next bed. I looked at my thin mattress. I reached under my pillow and pulled out the photo of Mark and Sarah that I had hidden there. It was taken 10 years ago. They looked so innocent. I tore the photo in half. I didn't do it out of hate. I did it out of necessity. The Anna who was their mother, the mother who forgave everything, who sacrificed everything, had died in that hospital bed. The woman who was going to sleep tonight was someone else. She was a landlady, and she had some very difficult tenants to deal with. I lay down and pulled the scratchy blanket up to my chin. For the first time in a week, I didn't pray for them to come back. I closed my eyes and smiled. Enjoy the penthouse, kids, I thought. Enjoy the view, because the rent is due. The transformation of a human soul is rarely a loud event. It doesn't happen with a fanfare of trumpets. It happens in the quiet moments. It happens when you look in the mirror and decide that the person looking back is no longer a victim. My transformation happened on a Tuesday over a bowl of lukewarm oatmeal. I was sitting in the communal dining hall of Green Willows. The room smelled of bleach and overcooked cabbage. Around me, the other residents were slumped over their trays. Some were sleeping. Some were staring at the television, where a game show host was screaming about a new car. I wasn't staring at the TV. I was staring at my knitting bag. To the nurses, I was just Mrs. Sterling in room 104. The quiet lady. The one who had been dumped by her rich children. The one who walked with a slight limp and always smiled politely. They pitied me. They spoke to me in that high-pitched, slow voice people use for toddlers and golden retrievers. How are we feeling today, sweetie? Did we finish our num-nums? If only they knew what was inside the knitting bag. Buried beneath 3 balls of yarn, azure blue, charcoal grey, and blood red, was a sleek silver laptop. Next to it was a smartphone with an encrypted connection. Arthur had brought them in yesterday, hidden inside a box of adult diapers. The irony was not lost on me. I finished my oatmeal. I wiped my mouth. I shuffled back to my room, playing the part of the frail old woman. I nodded to the orderly. I paused to catch my breath near the water cooler, but the moment I closed the door to room 104, the shuffle vanished. My roommate, Mrs. Higgins, was at her physical therapy session. I had the room to myself for exactly 45 minutes. I sat on my bed. I pulled out the laptop. I opened it. The screen glowed to life, a portal to a world my children thought I was too senile to understand. I logged into the secure portal Arthur had set up. Phoenix Holdings LLC. Status active. Assets under management $5,240,000. Primary investment the Heritage residential units 40A, 40D, 40C, penthouse level. I wasn't just a resident of a nursing home anymore, I was a shark. And the water was just fine. Arthur had been busy. In the last 2 weeks, he had worked miracles. He had used the trust fund to purchase the 3 top floor units of the Heritage, the brand new luxury skyscraper downtown. The developer was desperate for cash to finish the lobby, and Arthur, with his ruthless negotiation skills, had swooped in. We didn't just buy the apartments, we bought the controlling interest in the floor's management. That meant I had final say on tenant applications, renovations, and, most importantly, evictions. I clicked on the folder labelled Tenant Applications. There it was. Applicants, Mark Sterling and Sarah Sterling. Unit 40A. Penthouse. Monthly rent $12,000. Lease. Term 12 months. I opened their financial disclosures. It was sickening. They had listed the proceeds from selling my house as liquid assets inheritance. They had listed their occupation as entrepreneurs. I clicked on the credit report. Mark's credit was shot, riddled with maxed out cards and late payments on his luxury car lease. Sarah had no income at all, just a history of overdraft fees. Any sane landlord would have rejected them instantly. They were a financial disaster waiting to happen. But I wasn't a sane landlord. I was their mother. I opened the email draft Arthur had prepared for the building manager to send. Subject: lease approval. Unit 40A. Dear Mr. and Ms. Sterling, Phoenix Holdings LLC is pleased to inform you that your application has been approved. I deleted the standard text. I began to type. My fingers flew across the keys, fueled by a cold, precise energy. Approved, subject to strict adherence to the Phoenix Standard of Living clause. Please note that the owner of this unit values tranquility and order above all else. The lease includes a zero-tolerance policy for noise violations, unauthorized guests, and property damage. Late rent payments will result in immediate legal action. I read it over. It was harsh. It was bureaucratic. It was perfect. I hit send. I closed the laptop and shoved it back under the yarn. Just as the door handle turned, Mrs. Higgins was wheeled in by a nurse. "How was therapy, Doris?" I asked, my voice soft and grandmotherly. "Torture," Mrs. Higgins grumbled. "They want me to walk. I just want a cigarette." I smiled. "Maybe later, Doris." I lay back on my pillow. I closed my eyes. Across town, in a coffee shop or a lawyer's office, Mark and Sarah were receiving the email. They were probably celebrating. They were probably thinking they had fooled the world. They had no idea they had just signed a contract with their karma. 2 days later, Arthur came to visit. He brought a chessboard. It was our cover story. He was teaching me to play. "Your move," Arthur grumbled, moving a white pawn. We were in the garden this time. The weather was crisp. The autumn leaves were turning gold, the same colour as the decor in my old dining room. "Did they sign?" I asked, moving my knight. "They signed," Arthur said. "Didn't even read the addendum. Mark was too busy bragging to the leasing agent about his portfolio. Sarah was measuring the windows for curtains. Did they ask about the owner? About a Phoenix LLC?" Mark asked if he could meet the owner to negotiate a discount for paying 6 months up front, Arthur chuckled. I told the agent to say the owner is a reclusive European billionaire who hates face-to-face meetings. Mark bought it. He said he understands how us high net worth individuals operate. I snorted. He's got a net worth of 0 and a moral worth of less than that. They move in on Friday, Arthur said. He captured my pawn. They're hiring a high-end moving company, white glove service, costing them $4,000. With my money, I noted. With your money, Arthur agreed. Speaking of which, how are you doing with the rest of the funds? I looked at the chessboard. The strategy was becoming clear to me. I've been thinking, I said. I have $5 million. I'm spending a chunk of it to trap my children. But what about the rest? What about this place? I gestured around the garden. The grass was patchy. The benches were splintered. The staff looked exhausted. Their uniforms frayed. The food was abysmal. Green Willows wasn't a bad place because the people were evil. It was bad because it was underfunded. The nurses were good people trying to do an impossible job with no resources. I want to make some anonymous donations, I said, to Green Willows. Arthur raised an eyebrow. You want to improve the prison? It's not a prison, Arthur. It's a lifeboat, and it's leaking. I want to buy new mattresses for the West Wing. I want to hire a better catering service. I want the staff to get a bonus. If you do that, people will ask questions, Arthur warned. Do it through Phoenix LLC, I said. Tell the administration that a local charity has selected them for a grant. Make it conditional on anonymity. If they ask, say the donor had a parent here once. Arthur smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Playing God. Not God, I corrected him. Just a concerned neighbour. We played in silence for a while. I have something else for you, Arthur said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black device. It looked like a remote control. What is this? The access code to the security cameras in the heritage hallways and the exterior of the penthouse, Arthur whispered. The building manager installed them yesterday. Strictly for security purposes, of course. I took the device. It felt heavy in my hand. You can watch them, Arthur said. You can see who comes and goes. You can see what they bring in. You can see everything. I put the device in my pocket. Thank you, Arthur. Be careful, Anna, he said, his voice serious. Staring at the sun can blind you. Staring at your children's sins, it might do something worse. I'm not afraid, I said, but later that night, as I lay in the dark, I was afraid. I was afraid of what I would see. I was afraid that any lingering hope I had, any tiny, foolish wish that they missed me, would be extinguished forever. Friday came, the move-in day. I sat in the corner of the common room, my laptop open. I wasn't knitting. I was watching the live feed. The camera angle was high, looking down at the hallway outside the penthouse door. The door was beautiful, mahogany with gold fixtures. I saw the elevator doors open. Mark stepped out. He was wearing sunglasses. Even though he was indoors, he carried a bottle of champagne. Sarah followed him. She was holding a small dog, a Pomeranian I had never seen before. No pets allowed, I whispered to the screen. Clause 7, Section C. I made a note in my mental ledger. Strike 1. Behind them came the movers. They were carrying boxes, not just boxes. They were carrying new things. I saw a massive, flat-screen TV. I saw a white leather sectional sofa. I saw modern art, large, abstract canvases that looked like spilled paint. Then I saw something that made my breath catch. A mover was carrying a large, ornate mirror. It was gold-framed. It was old. It was my mirror. The one that used to hang in the hallway of the old house. The one Thomas had bought me for our 25th anniversary. Careful with that, Sarah shrieked on the audio feed. That's vintage. It's worth a fortune. I thought you said it was all junk, I whispered. I thought you threw it all away. They had kept the valuable things, the things they could sell later, or the things that made them look like they had old money heritage. They walked into the apartment, the door closed. I switched camera views. I couldn't see inside the apartment. That would be illegal, Arthur had said, but I could see the terrace. 10 minutes later, Mark and Sarah stepped out onto the balcony. The view was breathtaking. The city spread out below them like a carpet of jewels. Mark popped the champagne cork. It flew over the railing. Littering. Clause 9. They clinked glasses. I turned up the volume on my laptop. The microphone on the terrace camera was sensitive. To us, Mark said. To the good life. Finally, Sarah sighed. She leaned against the railing. God, can you believe we were stuck in that dusty old museum for so long? The smell of that house. It was like old people and despair. It's over now, Mark said. He took a long drink. The house is sold. The money is safe. And Mum is safely tucked away. Do you think she knows? Sarah asked. She paused, looking a little uneasy. About the price, or the apartment. How would she know? Mark laughed. She's in a nursing home, Sarah. Her biggest concern is bingo night and whether they're serving pudding. She's completely disconnected. She probably thinks we're living in a Motel 6 to save money. They both laughed. It was a cruel, carefree sound. She's happy there, Sarah rationalised. She has people her own age. It's better for her. We did her a favour, really. Exactly, Mark said. We liberated her from the burden of property, and we liberated the capital for people who actually know how to use it. Speaking of capital, Sarah said, I saw a bracelet at Tiffany's today. Since we saved so much on the rent negotiation. Get it, Mark said expansively. Get two. I closed the laptop. I sat there, staring at the blank screen. We liberated her. People who actually know how to use it. My hands were shaking. Not from age, from rage. A cold, hard rage that felt like iron in my veins. They weren't just selfish. They were delusional. They had rewritten reality to make themselves the heroes of their own story. They truly believed they deserved this. I stood up. I walked to the payphone. I dialed Arthur. It's me, I said. Did you watch? Arthur asked. I watched. And? They have a dog, I said, and they threw a champagne cork off the balcony. Do you want me to send a warning? No, I said. Not yet. Let them get comfortable. Let them unpack. Let them buy the bracelets and the art. Then what? Next week is the 1st of the month, I said. Send them the invoice for the security deposit and add a special assessment fee for the building's new concierge service they signed up for in the fine print. How much? $2,000, I said. They won't like that. They have the money, I said. Mark just said so. He wants to be a high net worth individual. Let's treat him like one. High net worth individuals pay high fees. Consider it done. I hung up. I turned around and saw Mrs. Higgins standing there. She was leaning on her walker, looking at me with shrewd eyes. You don't talk like a retired teacher, Anna, she rasped. I looked at her. Mrs. Higgins was 80. She had been a switchboard operator in her youth. She heard everything. Who are you really talking to? She asked. I walked over to her. I took her hand. It was cold and frail. Doris, I said softly, how would you like real butter with your toast tomorrow and maybe some fresh strawberries? Mrs. Higgins' eyes widened. What? I have a friend, I said. Who wants to help out? But it has to be a secret. I looked at the numbers. My children were living in a glass tower thinking they were kings, but they didn't realise that the foundation of that tower was built on the patience of a mother they had betrayed, and that patience was running out. Bingo, I whispered, but I wasn't looking at the card. I was looking at the clock. The game was just beginning. The inspection was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Friday. I didn't sleep the night before. I lay in my narrow bed at Green Willows, listening to Mrs. Higgins snore, while my mind was across the city, hovering in the hallway of the penthouse. I had given Arthur strict instructions: be cold, be professional, be the lawyer, not the uncle. I opened my laptop at 9:55 a.m. I had found a quiet corner in the facility's library, a room that used to be a dusty closet until the Phoenix grant paid for new armchairs and a fresh coat of paint. I logged into the security feed. I saw Arthur step out of the elevator. He looked imposing in his charcoal suit. He didn't lean on his cane. He used it like a scepter. He adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, checked his watch, and rang the doorbell. Ding dong. It took a long time for the door to open. Finally, Sarah appeared. She was wearing a silk robe that cost more than my monthly pension. Her hair was messy. She looked hungover. Yeah, she said, squinting at him. Then recognition dawned. Wait, Mr. Pennyworth? Dad's old lawyer. I turned up the volume. Good morning, Miss Sterling, Arthur said. His voice was devoid of warmth. I am here representing Phoenix Holdings, LLC, the property management firm. We are conducting the quarterly compliance inspection. Sarah blinked. You work for our landlord? I am the retained counsel for the holding company, Arthur said smoothly. May I come in? Ugh, seriously, Sarah groaned. Mark is still sleeping. The place is a mess. Can't you come back later? The inspection notice was sent via certified mail and email 48 hours ago, Arthur said, stepping past her before she could block him. Refusal of entry is a breach of lease. Clause 14. He was in. I switched the camera view to the living room feed. Arthur had managed to get a nanny cam installed in the smoke detector during the initial pre-move-in maintenance, claiming it was a high-tech fire sensor. The apartment was a disaster. Take-out boxes littered the white marble island, clothes were draped over the expensive furniture, and there, in the middle of the Persian rug, was a suspicious yellow stain. Arthur walked into the frame. He took a pen from his pocket and a clipboard. He didn't look at Sarah. He looked at the stain. He wrote something down. Mark stumbled out of the bedroom. He was wearing boxer shorts and a T-shirt that said Crypto King. What the hell is going on? Mark shouted. Who let this guy in? It's Mr. Pennyworth, Sarah hissed. He works for the building. Mark rubbed his eyes. He looked at Arthur with a sneer. Oh, right. The ambulance chaser. I didn't know you were reduced to being a landlord's lackey, Arthur. Business slow? I gripped the edge of the library table. How dare he? Arthur was a distinguished jurist. He was 10 times the man Mark would ever be. Arthur didn't flinch. He didn't even look angry. He looked bored. My client values discretion and order, Arthur said, tapping the clipboard. Mr. Sterling, I see you have installed an unauthorized satellite dish on the balcony. That is a violation. I need it for my trading terminal, Mark argued. I need nanosecond speed. Clause 6, Arthur recited. No exterior modifications. It must be removed by Monday. Fine, $250. Arthur walked over to the sofa. The little Pomeranian, Coco, jumped out from behind a cushion and started barking at him. And the dog, Arthur said. Unregistered pet. Fine, $500, plus a mandatory deep cleaning fee upon move out. This is harassment, Mark yelled. I pay 12 grand a month. I can have a damn dog if I want. Arthur turned to face him. He looked Mark up and down, from his messy hair to his bare feet. You pay for the privilege of living in a Phoenix property, Arthur said, and frankly, Mr. Sterling, you are treating a five-star residence like a fraternity house. The owner is not pleased. Let me talk to the owner, Mark demanded. Get him on the phone. I'll buy the damn unit if he's going to be such a pain. The unit is not for sale, Arthur said, and the owner does not speak to tenants who have yellow stains on the carpet. Arthur turned to the wall. He stopped. He was looking at the mirror. My gold mirror. He reached out and touched the frame. Nice piece, Arthur said. Antique. Victorian, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's a family heirloom, Sarah said quickly. From my mother's estate. Estate? Arthur raised an eyebrow. Is your mother deceased? There was a silence. A long, heavy silence. She's in a home, Mark said gruffly. She's not all there. We took the things she didn't need to preserve them. Preserve them, Arthur repeated. He looked around at the pizza boxes and the dog hair. Interesting definition of preservation. He made one last check on his clipboard. You have 3 days to rectify the violations, Arthur said, or we will initiate eviction proceedings. You can't evict us, Mark laughed, but there was a tremor in his voice. We have a lease. Read the fine print, Mark, Arthur said. He used his first name for the first time. It sounded like a curse. The lease protects the owner, not the tenant. Good day. Arthur walked out. The door clicked shut. Mark kicked the sofa. Old bastard. Sarah picked up the dog. Mark, maybe we should clean up. If they kick us out, where do we go? We spent the cash on the deposit. Relax, Mark said, pacing the room. I have a big play coming in on Tuesday. Solar energy futures. Once that hits, I'll buy this whole building and fire Pennyworth myself. I closed the laptop. My heart was racing, not with fear, but with adrenaline. Solar energy futures. I knew Mark. He was chasing the dragon. He was looking for the one big win that would fix everything. He was gambling with money he didn't have, on things he didn't understand. I packed up my things and walked back to my room. Everything okay, Anna? A nurse asked as I passed the station. Oh, yes. I smiled. Just watching a soap opera. The plot is getting very thick. The crash happened 3 weeks later. It wasn't a global crash. The stock market didn't collapse, but the specific volatile sector Mark had dumped his money into, speculative green tech startups, imploded overnight. I read about it in the financial section of the newspaper Arthur brought me. Solar bubble bursts. Millions lost in venture capital wipeout. I checked the date. It was the 28th of the month. Rent was due in 3 days. I went to my room and opened the tenant portal. Usually, Mark paid the rent on the 25th, right after his dividends cleared. The status for Unit 40A showed unpaid. I waited. The 29th passed. Unpaid. The 30th passed. Unpaid. On the morning of the 1st, I received an automated alert. Payment failed. Insufficient funds. I sat there, staring at the screen. It had begun. The money from the house sale, the $800,000, should have lasted them years, but between the car, the clothes, the jewellery, the first year's rent up front, which they hadn't actually paid up front, I discovered, they had negotiated a monthly plan to keep cash on hand, and Mark's gambling, they had burned through it in 6 months. I authorised the system to send the standard notice of late payment. Dear tenant, we have not received your rent for November. Please remit payment immediately to avoid penalties. 10 minutes later, my secure phone buzzed. It was a notification from the camera system. Motion detected, hallway. I opened the feed. Mark was pacing in the hallway, talking on his cell phone. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His expensive shirt was wrinkled. I need the bridge loan, Dave, he was pleading into the phone. Just for 2 weeks. I have assets. Look, my mother has a massive estate. It's just tied up in probate. I can guarantee it. I gasped. He was using me, using the lie of my death as collateral. No, don't call the lawyer, Mark said, panic rising in his voice. Just, okay, fine, bye. He slammed the phone against the wall. The screen shattered. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. Sarah opened the door. She looked frightened. Mark, she whispered. The card was declined at the grocery store. I couldn't buy dog food. Mark didn't look up. It's a glitch. It's not a glitch, Sarah screamed. I checked the accounts. There's nothing there. Where is the money, Mark? Where is Mum's money? Mark looked up. His eyes were wild. It's gone, okay? It's gone. The market tanked. I was trying to double it. I was trying to get us to 10 million. You lost it all. Sarah's voice was a whisper. I can fix it, Mark said, scrambling to his feet. I just need time. I need to see Mom. Mom? Sarah asked. Why? She has jewellery, Mark said. His voice was manic. She has that diamond ring Dad gave her, and the pearls. She took them to the home. If we can get them, we can pawn them. It's enough to cover rent and buy me a few days to find a new investor. I stared at the screen, horrified. They weren't coming to visit me out of love. They weren't coming to apologise. They were coming to rob me. I shut the laptop. My hands were trembling violently. I felt a surge of nausea. This was the bottom. I thought selling the house was the bottom. I thought leaving me in a home was the bottom. But planning to steal the rings off their mother's fingers. I stood up. I walked to the mirror in my small room. I looked at myself. I looked old. My hair was grey. My cardigan was worn. Let them come, I whispered to my reflection. I reached into my jewellery box, a small, cheap cardboard thing on the dresser. It was empty. I had given my diamond ring to Arthur for safekeeping the day he revealed the trust. I didn't want it stolen by staff or lost, but they didn't know that. I sat on the bed and waited. They arrived 2 hours later. They brought flowers, carnations, the cheapest flowers in the gas station bucket. I was sitting in the common room, knitting. I made sure to look frail. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I made my hands shake more than usual. Mom, Sarah chirped. Her voice was too high, too bright. Surprise! I looked up slowly. Sarah? Mark. Hi, Mom, Mark said. He was sweating. He kept wiping his palms on his pants. We missed you so much. Oh, I said. That's nice. They sat down. They pulled their chairs uncomfortably close. How are you doing? Mark asked. He was scanning my hands. He was looking for the ring. I'm fine, I said. The soup was cold today, but Mrs. Higgins gave me her pudding. That's great, Sarah said. She reached out and touched my arm. Mum, you know, we've been thinking. It's not safe for you to keep expensive things here, like your jewellery. Dad's ring. It's a liability, Mark added quickly. There are thieves in places like this. We should take it home, put it in our safe, for you. I looked at them. I looked deep into their eyes. I saw the fear. I saw the desperation. And beneath it all, I saw the complete lack of conscience. They were willing to strip me bare to save their own skins. My ring? I asked vaguely. I looked at my bare finger. Oh, that. Where is it, Mum? Mark asked. He leaned in. He smelled of sour sweat and fear. I don't have it, I said. Mark froze. What do you mean? I gave it away, I said. You... What? Sarah shrieked. Heads turned in the common room. She lowered her voice. You gave it away? To who? Mark demanded. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was painful. Mum, think. Who did you give it to? To the Phoenix Fund, I said innocently. Mark and Sarah exchanged a look of pure terror. What is the Phoenix Fund? Mark asked slowly. They are the nice people who bought the new armchairs, I said, pointing to the chair I was sitting in, and the new curtains. They sent a letter asking for donations. I didn't have any money, because you have it all, so I sent them the ring. No, Mark whispered. No, no, no. It was a donation, I rambled on, enjoying the colour draining from their faces. For the greater good. Dad always said charity is a virtue, and since I'm going to be here forever, I don't need diamonds, I need soft chairs. Sarah looked like she was going to be sick. You gave a $20,000 ring to a charity for chairs. Was it worth that much? I asked. Oh well, it's gone now. Mark stood up. He looked like he was going to punch the wall. We have to go, he said. We have to go. Already? I asked. But you just got here, and look at the lovely flowers. We're busy, Mum, Mark snapped. The mask of the loving sun slipped completely. We have problems you wouldn't understand. He turned and marched out. Sarah followed him, shooting me a look of pure venom. You're unbelievable, she muttered as she walked away. Senile old bat. I watched them go. I picked up the carnations. I smelled them. They had no scent. They were just cheap, dyed petals on wire stems. I stood up and walked over to the trash can. I dropped the flowers in. Then I went to the payphone and called Arthur. They were just here, I said. Did they try to take the ring? They tried. I told them I donated it. Arthur laughed. A dry, rasping sound. Brilliant. Arthur, I said, Mark is broke. He tried to get a loan using my estate as collateral. That's fraud, Arthur said. Serious fraud. I know, but I don't want the bank to get him. I want us to get him. The rent is 3 days late, Arthur noted. We can issue the 3-day notice to quit. It's the first step of eviction. Do it, I said. Post it on their door tomorrow morning. Make it bright red so the neighbours can see. And the late fees? Maximum allowable by law, I said. Anna, Arthur said gently, you know what happens next, right? If they can't pay, they will be on the street. They have no house to go back to. You sold it. I leaned against the wall. I looked out the window at the grey sky. They have a week, I said. They told me I only had to stay here for a week. Let's see how they handle a deadline. Very well. The notice goes up tomorrow. I hung up. I walked back to the common room. Mrs. Higgins was watching me. You look like the cat that ate the canary, she said. No, Doris, I said, picking up my knitting needles. I looked like the canary that finally learned how to fly. I looked down at my knitting, the red yarn. I wasn't knitting a scarf anymore. I was knitting a net, and it was tightening. There is a specific colour of red used for eviction notices. It isn't the warm red of a rose, nor the cheerful red of a Christmas bow. It is a harsh, violent, neon scarlet. It is designed to be seen. It is designed to scream failure to everyone who walks past. On Tuesday morning, that red paper was taped to the mahogany door of Unit 40A. I saw it happen on the security feed. A process server, a large man who looked like he had seen every excuse in the book, slapped the tape onto the wood, smoothed the paper down, took a photo for proof, and walked away. I sat in the library at Green Willows sipping tea that finally tasted like tea, thanks to the new filtration system the Phoenix grant had paid for. I watched. At 8:30 a.m, the neighbour from Unit 40B came out. He was an investment banker, the kind of man Mark desperately wanted to be. He paused. He looked at the red paper. He smirked. He took a picture with his phone. At 9 o'clock a.m., the cleaning lady for the floor arrived. She shook her head, muttering something, and kept walking. At 10:15 a.m., the door to Unit 40A finally opened. Mark stepped out. He was wearing his suit, trying to look ready for business. He had his phone to his ear, leaving a voicemail for some unfortunate investor. "I'm telling you, Dave, the liquidity is just a few days away." He stopped. He saw the paper. He froze. For a moment, he just stared at it. The words, 3-day notice to quit, were printed in bold black letters across the top. He looked left. He looked right. He saw the empty hallway, but he felt the eyes of the building on him. He ripped the paper off the door with a savage tear. The tape left a sticky residue on the expensive varnish. He crumbled the paper into a ball and shoved it into his pocket. He retreated back inside and slammed the door. I put down my teacup. 3 days, I thought. The clock is ticking. The panic inside the penthouse was palpable. I could hear it through the microphones. "Eviction!" Sarah's voice was shrill. "Mark, they can't do that. It's illegal. Squatters' rights or something." "It's not illegal if we don't pay rent, Sarah," Mark shouted back. "And we are 30 days late, plus the fines. They want $15,000 by Friday, or the sheriff comes to throw us out." "15,000?" Sarah gasped. "Where are we going to get $15,000? "I don't know," Mark yelled. The sound of glass shattering followed. He must have thrown a vase. "Call your friends. Ask Jessica. Ask that guy you dated, the hedge fund guy." "I can't ask them," Sarah cried. "They think we're rich. If I ask for money, I'll be a laughingstock." "We're already a laughingstock," Mark roared. The neighbour took a picture of the notice. It's probably on Instagram by now. I closed my eyes. It was ugly. It was raw. But it was necessary. They had spent their lives protected from consequences. Thomas and I had always been the safety net. When Mark crashed his first car, we paid. When Sarah overspent on her credit cards in college, we paid. We thought we were helping. We were just feeding the parasite. Now, the safety net was gone, and gravity was taking hold. By Wednesday, the desperation had turned into action, but not the kind of action that involves hard work. It was the action of people trying to liquidate their facade. I watched on the lobby camera as Mark and Sarah walked out. They weren't wearing their usual designer outfits. They wore hoodies and sunglasses. They were carrying large bags. I knew where they were going. I called Arthur. "Follow them," I said. "I want to know what they are selling." "I'm way ahead of you," Arthur said. "I have a private investigator tailing them. I'll stream the audio to you." 20 minutes later, I was listening to the feed from the PI's car. They were at a high-end pawn shop downtown, Goldman's Exchange. "I need 20 grand for the watch," Mark was saying. His voice was shaking. "It's a Patek Philippe, limited edition." "It's scratched," the pawnbroker said, his voice bored. "And the market is flooded with luxury watches right now. Every crypto bro who went bust is selling his toys. I'll give you 4 grand. 4? Mark sounded like he was being strangled. "I paid 30 for it." 4 grand. Take it or leave it." "Fine," Mark choked out. "Take it." "And the bag?" the broker asked. "It's a Birkin," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "It's an investment piece. It appreciates in value." "It's stained," the broker said. "Coffee, wine, 3 grand. "It's worth 12, Sarah wailed. 3 grand, cash." "Do it," Mark snapped at her. "We need the cash." I heard Sarah sobbing as she handed over the bag. The bag she had bought with the money from my house. The bag she had valued more than my comfort. They left the shop with $7,000 in cash, still 8,000 short. "What now?" Sarah asked as they stood on the sidewalk. The wind was blowing, distorting the audio. "The car," Mark said grimly. "No!" Sarah screamed. "Not the Range Rover. How will we get around? How will we look?" We'll look like people who aren't homeless, Mark shouted. We sell the car. CarMax will write a check today. I sat back in my chair at the nursing home. They were stripping themselves bare, layer by layer, the watch, the bag, the car. The armour of their ego was being dismantled. But was it enough? I remembered the look on Mark's face when he tricked me into signing the papers, the smug satisfaction. No, I decided, it's not enough. They are only selling things. They haven't sold their pride yet. Thursday, one day before the deadline, they had the money. Between the pawn shop and the quick sale of the car, which they sold for a fraction of its value because they were desperate, they had scraped together $16,000. They walked into the lobby of the Heritage. They marched up to the front desk. We're here to pay the rent, Mark announced loudly, slamming a thick envelope of cash onto the marble counter. He looked dishevelled. He had walked here, no car. The concierge, a young woman named Emily, who I had instructed personally via Arthur, looked at him with a polite, frozen smile. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, she said. We don't accept cash or personal checks, not after a 3-day notice has been issued. What? Mark's jaw dropped. Money is money. It's legal tender. Company policy, Emily said, pointing to a small sign. For delinquent accounts, payment must be made via certified cashier's check or wire transfer. And she paused, checking her computer screen. The file has been forwarded to our legal department. You can't pay here anymore. You have to settle with the attorney. What attorney? Mark demanded. Mr. Arthur Pennyworth, she said. Mark turned pale. Pennyworth? But he's my family lawyer. I mean, he was. He represents Phoenix Holdings, Emily said. You have to call him. Mark grabbed the envelope of cash. He looked like a trapped animal. He grabbed Sarah's arm and dragged her toward the elevator. I watched them go up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Arthur. He's calling me, Arthur said. Put him on speaker, I said. Let me listen. Arthur clicked a button. I heard the static and then Mark's voice filling Arthur's office. Arthur, you have to help me. They won't take the cash. I have the money. I sold the car, Arthur. I sold everything. Mark, Arthur said calmly, I tried to warn you. You ignored the lease terms. I'm trying to fix it. Mark was crying now, actual tears. Please, take the money. Call them off. Don't let them kick us out. We have nowhere to go. Nowhere? Arthur asked. What about your mother's house? Oh. Wait, that's right. There was a silence on the line, a silence heavy with regret. I know, Mark whispered. I know I screwed up. Okay, I screwed up. Just help me. The owner of Phoenix Holdings is very particular, Arthur said slowly. He doesn't usually accept late payments. He prefers to evict and find better tenants. I'll be a better tenant, Mark pleaded. I swear. There is one option, Arthur said. He paused for effect. I held my breath. The owner is in town. He is reviewing the portfolio tomorrow. He has agreed to a meeting. A meeting? Mark sounded hopeful. I can meet him. I can charm him. I'm good with investors. It's not an investor meeting, Mark, Arthur said coldly. It's a plea hearing. He will give you 10 minutes to explain why you should be allowed to stay in his building. If he likes your answer, he might accept the payment. If not, the sheriff will be waiting in the lobby. Okay, Mark said. Okay. When? Where? Tomorrow. 4 p.m. The executive conference room on the 40th floor, just down the hall from your apartment. I'll be there, Mark promised. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. The line went dead. He took the bait, Arthur said to me. Good, I said. Are you ready for this, Anna? Arthur asked softly. Tomorrow, you have to look him in the eye. You have to reveal yourself. I'm ready, I said. He might hate you for this, Arthur warned. He might never forgive you. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. He already hates me, Arthur, I said. He hates me because he thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm a burden. Tomorrow, he might hate me, but he will respect me. And more importantly, he will fear me. See you tomorrow, boss, Arthur said. I hung up. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I didn't knit. I didn't watch TV. I opened my closet. Yes, hidden in the back, behind the grey wool cardigans, was a garment bag Arthur had brought in for me. I unzipped it. Inside was my best suit, a deep navy Chanel suit that Thomas had bought me in Paris 20 years ago. It was timeless. It was powerful. And next to it, a pair of heels. Not the orthopedic shoes I had been shuffling around in. Real leather pumps. I touched the fabric. It felt like armour. I was done being the victim. I was done being the poor old lady. Tomorrow, the landlady was coming to collect. That night, I had a visitor. It wasn't Arthur. It was Mrs. Higgins. She knocked softly on my door at 9:00 p.m. Can't sleep? She asked. Big day tomorrow, I said, sitting up. Mrs. Higgins wheeled herself in. She looked at the garment bag hanging on the door. That's a serious outfit, she whistled. You going to a funeral? In a way, I said. I'm going to bury a lie. Mrs. Higgins nodded. She didn't ask for details. She reached into the pocket of her housecoat and pulled out a small, crumpled object. It was a lipstick, ruby red. Here, she said, tossing it to me. You look pale. If you're going to kick ass, you need red lips. I caught it. I looked at it. Thank you, Doris. Give 'em hell, Anna, she said, for all of us who got left behind. She wheeled herself out. I held the lipstick. I walked to the mirror. I applied it. The woman in the mirror changed. The greyness faded. The eyes sparked. I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for Doris, for the man in room 203 whose son never visited, for every parent who had sacrificed everything only to be treated like expired milk. I went to bed. I slept soundly. Friday, the day of reckoning. I told the nursing staff I was going out for a family visit. They didn't question me. Since the Phoenix grant, I had a certain level of autonomy. A black town car was waiting for me at the back entrance. Arthur had arranged it. The driver opened the door. Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Pennyworth sent me. I slid into the leather seat. The Heritage, please. The drive took 30 minutes. We drove past my old neighbourhood. I saw the street where my house used to be. I asked the driver to slow down. I looked. The house was gone. Not just sold, gone. The developer had bulldozed it. It was a dirt lot now, surrounded by chain-link fencing. A sign announced, "Coming soon, luxury condos." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. My roses were gone. The pantry door with the height chart was splintered wood in a landfill somewhere. Tears threatened to spill, but I held them back. Don't cry, I told myself. If you cry, you ruin the makeup. The house was gone, but the lesson remained. Keep driving, I said. We arrived at the Heritage. The building soared into the sky, a monolith of glass and steel. It looked cold, impenetrable. The car pulled into the private underground garage. Arthur met me at the elevator. He looked nervous. You look terrifying, he said. It was a compliment. Do they know? I asked. No, they are waiting in the conference room. They think they are meeting a Mr. X. Let's go. We rode the elevator up. The numbers climbed. 10, 20, 30, 40. My ears popped. The doors opened. The hallway was silent, carpeted in plush wool. At the end of the hall, double glass doors led to the conference room. Through the glass, I could see them. Mark was pacing. He was wearing his suit, but it looked rumpled. He was sweating. Sarah was sitting at the long table, her head in her hands. The dog was in her lap, looking anxious. They looked small. They looked defeated. Arthur handed me a folder, the eviction papers, and the lease termination agreement. I took the folder. "Wait here," I said to Arthur. "You want to go in alone?" "Yes." I took a deep breath. I adjusted my jacket. I checked my reflection in the glass door. The red lipstick was like a war paint. I pushed the doors open. They swung inward with a heavy whoosh. Mark spun around. He put on his best fake smile. "Sir, thank you so much for meeting with—" He stopped. Sarah looked up. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mark blinked. He rubbed his eyes. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Mum?" he whispered. I didn't smile. I didn't rush to hug them. I walked to the head of the table. I placed the folder on the polished wood. I pulled out the leather chair, the chairman's chair, and sat down. I folded my hands on the table. I looked at them. The silence stretched. It was heavy. It was suffocating. "Mom?" Sarah squeaked. What are you doing here? Did Arthur bring you?" "Arthur works for me," I said. My voice was calm, clear, and projected to the back of the room. It wasn't the voice of the old lady at the nursing home. It was the voice of the woman who had run a classroom of 30 unruly teenagers for 40 years. "Works for you?" Mark laughed nervously. "Mum, what are you talking about? This is a meeting with the owner. We have to—" "You need to leave before he gets here." "He isn't coming," I said. "What?" "The owner isn't coming," I repeated, "because she is already here." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the remote control for the building's security system. I placed it on the table next to the folder. "Phoenix LLC," I said, "rising from the ashes. Does the name ring a bell?" Mark stared at the remote. Then he stared at me. The colour drained from his face, leaving him a sickly grey. "No," he whispered. "No, that's impossible. You're broke. We sold the house." "You sold the house," I agreed, "for pennies, but you forgot about the trust. The trust your father set up to protect me from exactly this situation." Mark grabbed the edge of the table. He looked like he was going to faint. Sarah pointed a shaking finger at me. "You own the building." "I own the company that manages your lease," I corrected. "I own the debt you owe. I own the mayor that watched you throw my champagne cork off the balcony. I own the terror that watched you plan to steal my wedding ring." Sarah recoiled as if I had slapped her. "You watched," she whispered. "I saw everything," I said. "I saw the parties. I saw the waste. I saw you sell the car. I saw you try to pawn the fake Birkin bag." "It wasn't fake," Sarah protested automatically, then clamped her hand over her mouth. "And I saw the eviction notice," I continued. 3 days, Mark. That was the deadline." Mark fell into the chair opposite me. He looked shattered. "Mom," he choked out. "Why? Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us suffer?" "Suffering?" I raised an eyebrow. "You call living in a penthouse suffering? You call drinking champagne suffering?" I leaned forward. "I lived in a room with a stranger for 3 months. I ate gruel. I listened to you talk about how burdened you were by my existence. We were going to bring you home," Mark lied. "Once we got settled." "Don't lie to me," I snapped. The sharpness of my tone made him flinch. "I heard the phone call, Mark. Just for a week. That's what you said. Just for a week." I opened the folder. I took out the eviction order. "Well," I said, "it's been a week, a very long week." I slid the paper across the table toward them. "Your turn." Mark looked at the paper. Then he looked at the envelope of cash he had brought. "Here," he said, pushing the money toward me. 16,000. It's all of it. We sold everything. Just take it. Let us stay. Please, Mom, we have nowhere else. I looked at the cash. It was a messy pile of bills. Then I looked at the eviction notice, and finally, I looked at my children. They were crying now. Real tears. Tears of fear. Tears of realization. This was the moment. The moment I had planned for. The moment of victory. But as I looked at them, broken and begging, I felt a strange heaviness. Was this what I wanted? To destroy them? The money covers the back rent, I said slowly. And the fines? Mark nodded frantically. Yes, yes, we'll be good tenants. We'll get jobs. I'll get a real job, Mum. No more crypto, I swear. And me too, Sarah sobbed. I'll work at Starbucks. I don't care. I sat back. I tapped my finger on the table. You think money fixes this? I asked, softly. It pays the rent, Mark said. This isn't about rent, Mark, I said. This is about character. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. You left me, I said to the glass. You didn't just move me. You abandoned me. You erased me. I turned back to them. I accept the payment, I said. Mark let out a massive sigh of relief. He slumped onto the table. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Thank you, Mum. However, I said. Mark froze. I am not renewing your lease. What? Sarah gasped. You have paid for the past, I said, but you haven't earned the future. Not here. Not in this penthouse. I pointed to the door. You have until midnight to vacate the premises. Midnight? Mark stood up. But we have nowhere to go. You have $16,000 less than you did this morning, I said, looking at the cash I had just confiscated. But you have your health, you have your limbs, and you have the lesson. Mom, you can't do this, Sarah screamed. It's cruel. Cruel? I walked over to her. I looked down at her. Cruel is telling your mother you're taking her on a vacation and leaving her in an institution. Cruel is selling her memories for a handbag. I picked up the folder. Get out, I said, before I change my mind and call the police for the attempted theft of my ring. Mark looked at me. He saw the steel in my eyes. He saw the mother he knew, the soft, yielding mother, was gone. In her place was the landlady, and the landlady was not negotiating. He grabbed Sarah's arm. Come on, he muttered. But the furniture, Sarah cried. Leave it, Mark said. It belongs to the bank anyway. They walked to the door. Mark paused. He looked back at me. He started. Don't, I said. Just go. He nodded. He opened the door. They walked out into the hallway. I watched the door close. The room was silent. I was alone. I looked at the pile of cash on the table. $16,000, the price of their dignity. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I wiped it away with a fierce brush of my hand. The door opened again. Arthur stepped in. He looked at me. He looked at the cash. You did it, he said softly. Yes, I said, I did. How do you feel? I took a deep breath. I felt empty, but it was a clean emptiness, like a room that had been cluttered for years and was finally cleared out. I searched for the word. Light, I said. Arthur smiled. The car is waiting. Where to? Back to Green Willows? I looked at the penthouse view. Then I looked at the cash. No, I said. I'm done with Green Willows. I have a new project in mind. Oh? That dirt lot, I said, where my house used to be. Find out who owns the development rights. What are you going to do? I'm going to build something, I said. Not a house, a home, for people like Doris, people who need a second chance. I picked up the remote control. And Arthur, yes, get this cash to the Green Willows administrator. Tell them to buy the best Christmas dinner they've ever seen. Lobster, prime rib. The works. Consider it done. I walked out of the conference room. I walked down the hall to the elevator. I didn't look back at the penthouse door. The landlady had collected her due. The eviction was complete, and for the first time in a long time, Anna Sterling was going home. Not to a building of brick and mortar, but to a place of peace within herself. The silence that follows a storm is often heavier than the storm itself. When the elevator doors slid shut, sealing Mark and Sarah inside their metal capsule of descent, the conference room fell into a profound stillness. It wasn't peaceful. It was the ringing silence of a battlefield after the cannons have stopped firing. I stood there for a long time. I stared at the polished wood of the table where my son had wept. I stared at the spot on the carpet where my daughter had begged. "Are you okay?" Arthur asked. He was standing by the door, his hands clasped behind his back, respectful of my grief. "I don't know," I admitted. I touched the cold glass of the window. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel like justice herself. And I just feel like a mother who lost her children, I whispered. Arthur walked over. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't tell me I did the right thing. He just stood next to me and looked down at the street, 40 stories below. "Watch," he said softly. I looked down. The cars were tiny specks, moving in the rhythmic flow of rush-hour traffic. The people were ants. Then the front doors of the Heritage opened. 2 small figures emerged. From this height, I couldn't see their faces. I couldn't see the tears or the fear. I just saw 2 people, burdened with bags, standing on the sidewalk. It had started to rain, a grey, miserable drizzle that slicked the pavement. I saw Mark gesture for a taxi. None stopped. He checked his phone, probably checking for an Uber, before realizing his credit card was likely frozen or maxed out. Sarah was hugging herself, the little dog tucked under her arm. She looked lost. She looked like a child waiting to be picked up from school, but no one was coming. My hand twitched. The instinct was ancient. It was burned into my DNA. Run to them. Fix it. Open the umbrella. Warm them up. I pressed my hand against the glass, hard. The cold seeped into my palm. "Don't," Arthur said. He hadn't looked at me, but he knew. "If you go down there now, everything you did, the nursing home, the suffering, the scheme, it all becomes a joke. You become the enabler again. They have nowhere to go," I said. "They have legs," Arthur countered. "They have brains. They are 35 and 32 years old, Anna. They are not children. They are adults who have forgotten how to survive because you never let them learn." I watched as Mark finally flagged down a yellow cab. He argued with the driver, probably negotiating the fare up front with cash. The driver nodded. They threw their bags in the trunk and climbed in. The taxi pulled away, merging into the river of red tail lights. They were gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. My shoulders slumped. The steel armour of the landlady cracked, and I was just Anna again. "It is done," I said. "It is done," Arthur agreed. "Now, we have business to attend to. The penthouse." "The penthouse? You possess it now," Arthur said. Technically, since they surrendered the keys to the concierge downstairs, possession reverts to the owner immediately. Do you want to see it?" I hesitated. Did I want to walk through the wreckage of their extravagance? "Yes," I said. "I need to see what my house paid for." We walked down the long, plush hallway to Unit 40A. The door was unlocked. The red eviction notice was gone, ripped away, leaving only a jagged scar of tape. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. It was a mix of expensive perfume, stale pizza, and dog urine. It was the smell of negligence masked by luxury. I walked in. The apartment was vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a view worth millions, but the soul of the room was rotten. The white leather sofa was stained. There were wine rings on the marble countertops. I walked through the living room. I saw the empty space on the wall where the television had been. They had taken that, at least. I walked into the bedroom. The bed was unmade, a tangle of silk sheets. Clothes were scattered everywhere, designer items that they couldn't carry or didn't value enough to save. I saw a shoe on the floor, a single Louboutin heel, red soled. I picked it up. It was heavy. $600, I thought. This shoe cost more than my monthly food budget at Green Willows. I dropped it. It made a hollow thud. I walked to the closet. It was a walk-in, larger than my room at the nursing home. It was mostly empty now, but in the corner, pile of boxes remained. I knelt down. I opened one. It was full of papers, Mark's business papers. I picked up a glossy brochure. Solara Tech, the future of energy. It was the scam he had invested in. I picked up another paper. It was a letter. Unopened. It was addressed to me. Mrs. Anna Sterling, Green Willows Care Facility. My heart skipped a beat. Mark had written to me. I tore it open. Dear Mum, I hope you are well. Sarah and I are. The writing stopped there. The pen had trailed off. He had started a letter and never finished it. Why? I looked closer at the paper. There was a calculation scribbled in the margin. Rent, 12K. Car, 2K. Club, 1K. Mum, there? He had been calculating his budget, and next to Mum he had written question marks. He hadn't written the letter to check on me. He had written it to figure out how much I was costing him. I crumbled the letter. Trash, I said aloud. I stood up. I walked out of the closet. I went to the bathroom. The sink was clogged with makeup wipes, just as the report had said. I looked in the mirror. Not my gold mirror. Arthur had said they took that, which gave me a strange sense of relief. At least they valued something from the past. I looked at my reflection in the modern backlit glass. The red lipstick was still perfect, a slash of defiance on my pale face. You did good, I told myself. You survived. I walked back out to the living room where Arthur was waiting. He was holding a tablet, tapping away. I've already contacted a cleaning crew, Arthur said. They can be here in an hour. We can list the unit for rent by Monday. The market is hot. We can get 15,000 easily. I looked around the room one last time. No, I said. Arthur stopped tapping. No, don't rent it. Anna, this is prime real estate. Carrying costs are high. Taxes, HOA fees. I don't care, I said. I don't want another tenant. Not yet. Then what do you want to do with it? I walked to the window. I looked at the city lights. Sell it, I said. Sell the whole floor, the penthouse, the units below, sell the management rights, liquidate Phoenix LLC's holdings in this building. Arthur was stunned. But we just bought it. We'll take a loss on the transaction fees. I don't care about the profit, Arthur. This building, it's poisoned for me. It's a monument to their greed and my deception. I want out. I turned to him. Take the money from the sale. Put it back in the trust. We're going to need it for the next phase. Arthur smiled slowly. He closed the tablet. The next phase, he repeated. The dirt lot? The dirt lot, I confirmed. We left the apartment. I locked the door behind me. I left the smell of stale perfume and failure trapped inside. The ride back to Green Willows was quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. This is the last night, I said as we pulled up to the gate of the nursing home. You're checking out tomorrow? Arthur asked. Yes, I have to. I can't keep pretending, and besides, I have work to do. Where will you stay? I'll find a hotel, something modest, while we plan the construction. Arthur nodded. I'll pick you up at 10. I got out of the car. I walked into the facility. It was late. The hallway was dim. The night shift nurse, a kind woman named Maria, looked up from her book. Mrs. Sterling, she whispered, you're back late. Did you have a nice time with your family? I paused. I had a very educational time, Maria, I said. I walked to room 104. Mrs. Higgins was awake. The glow of her small TV illuminated her face. She turned when I entered. Well, she rasped, did you slay the dragon? I sat on my bed. I kicked off the expensive heels. I peeled off the Chanel jacket. The dragon is slain, I said, but the castle is empty. Mrs. Higgins turned down the volume on the TV. She wheeled herself over to my bed. It always is, honey, she said softly. Revenge keeps you warm while you're plotting it, but once it's done, it's just cold ash. They hate me, I said. The tears finally came. Silent, hot tears. My own children hate me. They hate themselves, Mrs. Higgins corrected. And they're projecting it on you because you're the mirror. Give them time. Maybe they'll grow up. Maybe they won't. But you couldn't carry them anymore. Your back was breaking. I reached out and took her hand. Her skin was rough, calloused from years of gripping her wheelchair wheels. I'm leaving tomorrow, Doris, I said. She nodded. She didn't look surprised. I figured, you don't belong here. You're not done yet. I have a plan, I said. I'm going to build a place, a real place, not like this. I gestured to the peeling paint and the linoleum floor. A place with gardens, with good food, with dignity, for people like us. Mrs. Higgins' eyes widened. You got that kind of money? I do now. Well, she grinned, showing her gold tooth. If you need a head of security, I know a guy who knows a guy. I laughed. It was a wet, shaky laugh, but it was real. I might just take you up on that, Doris. In fact, I want you to be my first consultant. I need to know everything that's wrong with this place so I don't make the same mistakes. We spent the next hour talking, not about my children, not about the eviction, but about windows, about soup, about the importance of a door that locks from the inside. I fell asleep that night, not as a mother mourning her loss, but as an architect dreaming of a foundation. The next morning, I packed. It didn't take long. I had arrived with one suitcase, and I was leaving with one suitcase. The only difference was that the suitcase now contained a Chanel suit and a laptop worth $3,000. I walked to the front desk. The administrator, Mrs. Trunch, as we secretly called her, was there. I'm checking out, I said. She looked up startled. Checking out? But your son paid for 2 years. My son's payment is non-refundable, I assume. Well, strictly speaking, yes, the contract says. Keep it, I said. Consider it a donation to the facility. Use it to fix the heater in the east wing. It's making a rattling noise. She gaped at me. Mrs. Sterling, you can't just leave. Where will you go? Does Mark know? Mark knows everything he needs to know, I said. I signed the discharge papers. Anna P. Sterling. My signature was firm, no tremors. I walked out the automatic doors. The sun was shining. It was a crisp, cold November day. The air tasted of frost and freedom. Arthur's car was waiting. But before I got in, I turned back to look at Green Willows. It was a sad brick box, but it had been my cocoon. I had entered it as a caterpillar, soft, vulnerable, waiting to be crushed. I was leaving it as something else, not a butterfly. That was too delicate. A hawk. I got into the car. Ready? Arthur asked. Take me to the lot, I said. The lot? Now? It's just dirt, Anna. I need to stand on it, I said. I need to see where the new foundation goes. We drove to my old street. The neighbourhood was the same. The trees were bare. Mrs. Gable's curtains twitched as we drove past. She was still watching the world from her window. We stopped in front of the chain-link fence. The Phoenix Grant had already been busy. Arthur, efficient as always, had secured the purchase of the land back from the developer early this morning, using the funds from the future sale of the penthouse as leverage. It was a risky financial manoeuvre, but Arthur enjoyed living dangerously. I got out of the car. I walked up to the fence. The house was gone. The basement hole had been filled in. It was just a flat, brown square of earth. I gripped the cold metal of the fence. I closed my eyes and remembered. I remembered Mark running across the lawn. I remembered Sarah sitting on the porch swing. I remembered Thomas grilling in the backyard. I let the memories play out like a movie, and then I let them fade. Goodbye, I whispered to the ghosts. I opened my eyes. I didn't see the past anymore. I saw the future. I saw a 3-story building, red brick, warm and inviting. I saw a wraparound porch with rocking chairs. I saw a greenhouse where the residents could grow their own vegetables. I saw a sign over the gate, the Sterling House. It wouldn't be a nursing home. It would be a living home. Arthur stepped up beside me. We have the permits, he said. Zoning might be an issue, but I know the mayor. We can break ground in the spring. No, I said. We break ground now. The winter is coming. People need shelter. It will cost more to build in the snow, Arthur warned. I have $5 million, Arthur, I said, and I have the rent money from the penthouse. Spend it. I turned to him. And Arthur? Yes? I want to send a package to Mark and Sarah. Arthur stiffened. You want to give them money? No, I said. I want to send them their stuff. Their stuff. The boxes in the closet, the fake Birkin, the letter Mark didn't finish. Send it to general delivery at the post office. Let them know they can pick it up. Is that wise? It opens a line of communication. It's closure, I said. I'm returning their baggage. I don't want to carry it anymore. I looked back at the dirt lot. Let's go, Arthur. We have architects to interview. We got back in the car. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the empty space where my life used to be. I looked forward at the road stretching out ahead. The landlady was retired. The architect had begun her work. That winter was cruel. The snow fell heavily, blanketing the empty lot where my old house once stood. But when the first crocuses pushed through the hard ice in March, they were no longer growing on waste ground. They were growing beneath the shadow of new steel frames and wooden beams. 6 months. That is how much time had passed since the day I walked out of the elevator at the Heritage, leaving behind my weeping children and $16,000 on a polished table. 6 months of absolute silence. I no longer lived at the nursing home. I rented a small, modest apartment on the ground floor of an old brick building, 2 blocks from the construction site. It wasn't luxurious. The floors creaked and the heating system rattled loudly, but it had a large desk by the window where I spread out the blueprints every morning. Today was Monday. The sound of hammers echoed in the sharp morning air. Knock deck, knock gog, knock. That was my new heartbeat. Not the ticking of a clock, but the sound of creation. I pulled the white hard hat down over my grey hair. I stepped through the construction gate. The sign I had envisioned was now a reality, made of real wood and painted a tasteful navy blue. The Sterling House. A community residence for senior independents. Good morning, Mrs. Sterling. The foreman, a large man named Mike, waved to me from the scaffolding. Watch that truss, Mike, I called up to him. And remember to check the slope of the wheelchair ramp on the east entrance. I want it a bit flatter than the standard requires." "Understood, boss," Mike cheered. I walked around the site. I touched the rough brick walls. This would be the library. That would be the common room with the fireplace. And out there, where my rose garden used to be, would be a therapy garden with raised flower beds so the residents wouldn't have to bend down. I wasn't rebuilding the old house. I was building something bigger. A place where no one was left behind simply because they grew old. A place where dignity was not measured by a bank account. But while I was building a home for strangers, I still couldn't stop myself from thinking about the young birds that had been pushed from the nest. Arthur arrived at 10 o'clock. His car was splattered with mud. He walked a little slower than before, but his eyes were still razor sharp. "What's the progress report?" he asked, pointing at the building. "The second floor framing is done," I said. "We're on schedule for an autumn opening. And you? What is your report?" Arthur sighed. He opened his familiar leather briefcase. He pulled out a brown envelope. "The monthly surveillance report," he said quietly. "Are you sure you want to see it? You promised you would let go." "I let go of control over their lives," I said, taking the envelope. "But I did not let go of concern. I am still their mother, Arthur." I opened the envelope. Inside were grainy surveillance photos and a short written report from the private investigator Arthur had kept on retainer. I looked at the first photo. Mark. He was standing next to an old, beat-up scooter. He wore a neon orange delivery jacket with the logo of a fast food app. Hubby Eats. It was raining in the picture. Mark was hunched over, trying to shield the food bags from getting wet. His face looked gaunt and unshaven. Gone was the sleek polish of the crypto king he once pretended to be. "He is working 12 hours a day," Arthur said softly, "delivering pizza, delivering Thai food. The tips aren't great." "Where is he living?" "A basement room in the East End, sharing a bathroom with 3 other people." I swallowed hard. A wave of heartache swelled in my throat. My son, the one who used to only drink imported coffee and sneer at manual labourers. Now, he was racing against the clock for every small dollar. "Is he gambling again?" I asked. "No," Arthur shook his head. "He doesn't have the money to gamble, and the detective says he often stops in front of electronics stores, not to buy, just to stare at the financial news screens on display." I moved to the next photo. Sarah. My spoiled youngest daughter was wearing a black uniform. She was standing behind the counter of a cosmetics store in a shopping mall, not the high-end counter, a discount kiosk where everything was marked with bright yellow labels. In the picture, Sarah was kneeling on the floor, cleaning up a spilled bottle of nail polish. A manager, who looked 10 years younger than her, was pointing and scolding her. Sarah's eyes were red, but she wasn't fighting back. She just bowed her head and cleaned. "She is living in a small studio apartment," Arthur said. "She sold all her handbags. The detective says the dog, little Coco." My heart tightened. "The dog? She still has him," Arthur said. "Even though her landlady strictly forbids pets, she sneaks him into her handbag every night. She shares her food with the dog." I closed my eyes. A hot tear rolled down my cheek. Sarah, who once demanded I throw away her father's keepsakes because they cluttered the house, was now risking her shelter to protect a small living creature. "They are suffering," I whispered. "They are living," Arthur corrected me. "For the first time in their lives, Anna, they are truly living as adults. No safety net, no mother." Was I too cruel? "You saved them," Arthur said firmly. "If you had let them stay in that penthouse, Mark would be in jail for financial fraud, and Sarah would have become a soulless doll. This hardship, This is the antidote. I put the pictures back into the envelope. I didn't want to look any more. The image of Mark soaked in the rain and Sarah kneeling to scrub the floor was etched into my mind. All right, I said, my voice shaky. Thank you, Arthur. One more thing, Arthur said, his expression turning serious. Regarding the Sterling House project. What is it? Budget issues? No, the neighbours. Arthur pointed toward the houses across the street, the quiet suburban homes where my former neighbours still lived. We have a petition, Arthur said, signed by the local residents' association. They are opposing the construction. Opposing? Why? This is a residence for seniors, not a nightclub. They are calling it a high-density dwelling facility, Arthur said, with a dry laugh. They fear their property values will drop. They fear the ambulance noise. They fear poor old people. I looked toward Mrs. Gable's house. The curtains were drawn, as always. Who is spearheading the petition? I asked, though I already knew. Martha Gable, Arthur confirmed, and the town council has called a meeting for tonight. We must attend to defend the zoning permit. Otherwise, they can halt the construction. I clenched my fists. I had fought my children. Now I had to fight the people who used to eat my Christmas cookies. Get the car ready, Arthur, I said, adjusting my hard hat. We have a meeting tonight. The town hall auditorium was packed. The air was thick and tense. I sat in the front row, Arthur beside me. Behind me, I heard the hushed whispers. That's her, Anna Sterling. I thought she was dead, or in a home. I heard she won the lottery, or inherited a fortune. Why does she want to build a refuge camp here? I kept my back straight. I wore a simple but elegant grey suit. I was not here to beg. I was here to claim the right to contribute. On the podium, the mayor banged his gavel. Order, we will begin the hearing on the Sterling House project. Martha Gable stood up first. She wore her usual floral dress, but her face was crumpled with anger. Mr. Mayor, she said, her voice piercing, we love Anna. She was a good neighbour. But this project is unacceptable. 15 rooms, an industrial kitchen. It will destroy the peace of our neighbourhood. Who will live there? Vagrants, the ill. The crowd clapped in agreement. We want to protect our property values, a man shouted. Exactly. Nobody wants to live next to a disguised hospital. One by one, they stood up. People I had known. People who had smiled at me. Now, they looked at me like a threat. They feared old age. They feared poverty. And they wanted to push it out of sight. I sat silently, listening to it all. Arthur gently touched my arm. It's your turn. I stood up. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked down at the crowd. Hello, Martha, I said. Hello, Bob. Hello, Susan. The entire hall fell silent. I lived on this street for 40 years, I began. My husband and I planted the oak trees along the sidewalk that you are all parking under. I taught your children history at the high school. I paused. You speak of property values. You fear your homes losing worth. I looked directly into Martha's eyes. 6 months ago, I said, my voice dropping, I was forced out of my home, not by a stranger, but by my own family. Why? Because they saw that house as an asset to be liquidated, not a home. They saw me as a burden to be hidden away. The crowd started to murmur. The story of my house sale was a vague rumour, but no one knew the truth. I lived in a wretched nursing home, I continued, where the elderly are forgotten like old furniture, where they wait to die in loneliness. And I realised one thing. The scariest poverty is not the lack of money. It is the lack of humanity. The Sterling House is not a refuge camp, I said, my voice ringing strong. It is a reminder that one day all of you here will grow old. You will grow weak, and you will hope for a place that does not judge you by your wallet, but by your dignity. You can stop me from building, I concluded, but you cannot stop time. And when old age knocks on your door, I truly hope, you are not treated the way you wish to treat my future residents. I stepped away from the microphone. The hall was silent. No one clapped, but no one heckled either. Shame was slowly seeping into the air. I walked down the steps. As I headed toward the exit, I saw a figure standing in the darkened corner of the hall. A man wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He wore the neon orange delivery jacket. My heart skipped a beat. Mark. He was standing there, leaning against the wall. He had heard everything. Our eyes met for a fleeting second. I braced myself for anger. I waited for him to rush over and accuse me of ruining his life, but he didn't. In my son's tired, hollow eyes, I saw something different. Respect. He looked at me as if he was seeing me, truly seeing me, for the very first time. Not as a doddering old mother, not as an ATM, but as a woman who dared to stand up against an entire town to protect her beliefs. Mark gave a slight nod, a very subtle nod. Then he pulled his cap lower, turned his back, and walked out the door, disappearing into the night. I stood rooted to the spot. Arthur came up to me. "Was that?" Arthur asked. "Yes," I whispered. "Do you want to go after him?" I looked at the closing door. The urge to run after him, to slip some money into his hand, to ask if he was hungry, that feeling surged like a tidal wave. But I remembered Arthur's words, "Hardship is the antidote," and I remembered that nod. It was the first sign of maturity. If I chased after him now, I would strip him of the dignity he was trying to rebuild from the ashes. "No," I said, though my heart was bleeding. "Let him go. He has orders to deliver." We walked to the car. "You won, Anna," Arthur said as we got into the back seat. "Look." I looked out the window. Martha Gable was surrounded by other neighbours. She was tearing up the petition. She looked regretful. "The council will approve it," Arthur confirmed. "Good," I said. I leaned my head against the seat, feeling exhausted but clean. Tonight I had fought for a home for strangers, and tonight I saw my son, if only for a moment, learning how to be a man. The car rolled forward. I looked out the window, watching the streetlights pass. Winter was truly over, but the spring still held many storms. Summer arrived with a vengeance. The heat rose off the pavement in shimmering waves, turning the construction site into a dust bowl of activity. The Sterling house was no longer a skeleton. It had skin and bones now. The red brick facade was complete. The windows were installed, reflecting the cloudless blue sky. The wraparound porch, my favourite feature, was being stained a warm mahogany colour, but as the building grew stronger, I felt myself growing weaker. It was a subtle decline, a shortness of breath when climbing the temporary stairs, a tremor in my hands that had nothing to do with nerves. My doctor, Dr. Evans, had warned me that broken heart syndrome leaves scars. My heart muscle had recovered, but it wasn't the iron engine it used to be. "You need to slow down, Anna," Arthur scolded me. One July afternoon. We were standing in the unfinished lobby, surrounded by sawdust. "You're 70 years old. You're the financier, not the foreman." "I have to make sure it's right," I insisted, leaning heavily on a cane I had recently started using, purely for balance, I told myself. "The contractor, Mr. Russo, is trying to cut corners on the insulation. I saw the specs. He's using grade B material." "I'll handle Russo," Arthur said. "No," I said stubbornly. "He thinks he can bully an old woman, and I need to show him I know the difference between fiberglass and cellulose." I walked, or rather shuffled, toward the back office where Mr. Russo was yelling into his phone. But before I could get there, a delivery scooter pulled up to the open frame of the front door. It was a Speedy Eats scooter. The orange box on the back was battered. The driver hopped off. He kept his helmet on, the visor down. He carried a stack of brown paper bags, lunch for the construction crew. He walked past me. He smelled of exhaust fumes and cheap deodorant. He went straight to the table where Mr. Russo was standing. "Lunch," the driver mumbled, putting the bags down. "About time," Russo grunted. He didn't look up from his blueprints. He was talking to his foreman. "Look, just put the cheap stuff in the walls. The old lady won't know. She's half blind anyway. We saved 20 grand. We split the difference." I froze. I was 10 feet away, hidden behind a stack of drywall. My blood boiled. I griped my cane, ready to march out and fire him on the spot. But the delivery driver spoke first. "That's illegal," the driver said. His voice was muffled by the helmet. Russo turned around, annoyed. "Excuse me, did the pizza guy just speak?" The driver reached up and unbuckled his helmet. He pulled it off. It was Mark. His hair was longer, matted with sweat. His face was tanned and lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. "I said that's illegal," Mark repeated, his voice steady. "Substituting materials specified in a contract without owner approval is fraud. And if it's insulation, it's a violation of the State Fire Code, Section 404. Russo laughed, a nasty, barking sound. "And what would a delivery boy know about fire codes?" Mark stepped forward. He didn't puff out his chest like he used to when he wore Italian suits. He stood with a different kind of weight, the weight of someone who has nothing left to lose. "I used to develop real estate," Mark lied. Or half lied. "And I know that if you install Grade B insulation, you void the building's insurance policy. If there's a fire, you go to jail for negligence. Not civil court. Criminal court." Russo stopped laughing. He narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "I'm nobody," Mark said. "Just the guy bringing you sandwiches. But I suggest you install the Grade A material listed in the bid. Or I might accidentally drop a tip to the building inspector. I deliver his lunch too." The silence in the room was thick. The crew members stopped eating. Russo glared at Mark. Then he looked at the blueprints. Then he spat on the floor. "Fine," Russo muttered. "Use the Grade A. But it's coming out of your bonus, Dave." He stormed off. Mark stood there for a moment. He took a deep breath. He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. I stepped out from behind the drywall. "Mark," I said. He flinched. He turned around slowly. He looked at me, then down at his dirty uniform, then at the helmet in his hand. Shame flooded his face. "Hi, Mum," he whispered. "You knew the fire code?" I asked. He shrugged. I had a lot of time to read while waiting for orders, and I remember Dad talking about it once, when he renovated the attic. "You stopped him from cheating me." "He's a crook," Mark said. "I can smell a crook. Takes one to know one, right?" He gave a bitter, self-deprecating smile. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was thin, his hands were rough, but he had just stood up for me. Not for money. He didn't know I was there. He did it because it was right. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "I can have Arthur order more lunch." "Can't," Mark said, checking his cheap digital watch. "I have 3 more deliveries in this zone. If I'm late, the algorithm docks my pay." He put his helmet back on. He looked like a knight putting on a battered visor. "The place looks good, Mum," he said, his voice muffled again. "Really good. You're building something real." "Mark," I called out. As he turned to leave, he stopped. "Thank you." He hesitated. For a second, I thought he might come over and hug me, but the gap between us was still too wide, filled with too much hurt. "Just check the invoices for the plumbing," he said over his shoulder. "Russo overcharges for copper piping." Then he was gone. The sound of his scooter buzzing away was the only answer. I stood there, leaning on my cane. My heart was pounding, but not from sickness, from hope. 2 weeks later, the heat broke. A thunderstorm rolled in, washing the dust off the new brickwork. I was in my temporary apartment, reviewing the resumes for the staff. I needed nurses, cooks, cleaners. There was a knock on the door. I expected Arthur, but when I opened it, I found a small cardboard box sitting on the doormat. No note, no return address. I brought it inside. My hands trembled as I cut the tape. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a book. It was an old, leather-bound photo album. The photo album, the one that covered the years 1985 to 1995, the prime years, Thomas grilling burgers, Sarah losing her first tooth, Mark graduating elementary school. I thought this was gone. I thought it was in a landfill, buried under tons of garbage. I opened the cover. There was a post-it note stuck to the first page. The handwriting was loopy and familiar. I found it at a flea market. Some scavenger must have picked it from the curb. I had to trade my earrings to get it back. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I didn't want you to lose Dad too. So I ran my fingers over the photos. They were slightly water damaged at the edges, but they were here. Sarah had found it. She had recognized it, and she had sacrificed the last piece of her vanity, her earrings, to save it. I hugged the book to my chest. I sat in my armchair and wept. Not tears of grief, but tears of relief. The ice was melting. It was slow, agonizingly slow, but it was melting. August came. The building was finished. We received the certificate of occupancy on a Tuesday. The furniture arrived on Wednesday. Thursday was the day of the final walkthrough before the grand opening on Sunday. I felt terrible that morning. My chest felt tight, like a heavy band was wrapped around my ribs. My left arm felt numb. Just stress, I told myself. Just excitement. I took 2 aspirin. I drank a cup of strong tea. I put on my best dress, a floral print that Thomas loved. Arthur picked me up. "You look pale," he noted as I got into the car. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just anxious. Today is the day, Arthur. It's finally real." We drove to the Sterling house. It was beautiful. The morning sun hit the sign, making the gold letters gleam. The garden was blooming. Late summer roses, resilient and bright. We walked inside. The lobby smelled of fresh paint and lilies. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It is," Arthur agreed. "You did it, Anna." We walked to the main dining room. The tables were set. The curtains were drawn. Suddenly, the room tilted. The floor seemed to rush up to meet me. The light fractured into 1,000 stars. "Anna!" Arthur's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I felt strong arms catch me before I hit the ground. Then, darkness. I woke up to the beep, beep, beep of a monitor. Not again, I thought. Please, not again. I opened my eyes. I was back in St. Jude's Hospital. The same white walls, the same smell of antiseptic. But this time, the faces hovering over me were different. Dr. Evans was there, looking stern. Arthur was in the corner, looking terrified. "What happened?" I rasped. "You pushed it too far," Dr. Evans said bluntly. "Your heart, Anna. It's not a machine. You had an episode of arrhythmia. You fainted. Am I dying?" "Not today," Dr. Evans said. "But you can't run a facility, Anna. You can't be the director. You can't be the manager. You need to be a resident. You need rest. Absolute rest." I tried to sit up, but my body refused. Tears of frustration welled up. "But the opening," I whispered. "It's Sunday. I have to be there. I have to cut the ribbon." "You will be in this bed on Sunday," Dr. Evans said firmly, "or you will be in a coffin by Monday. Your choice." He walked out. I looked at Arthur. He looked old and defeated. "Cancel it," I said, turning my face to the pillow. "Cancel the opening. I can't do it. If I'm not there, who will run it? Who cares enough to run it? Arthur didn't answer. He just sat there, twisting his hat in his hands. Friday passed in a blur of tests and sleeping pills. Saturday morning, the day before the opening, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wallowing in a deep, dark depression. I had built a castle, but I was too weak to rule it. I had created a home, but I was stuck in a hospital. The door to my room opened. I expected a nurse. Instead, a small dog trotted in. A Pomeranian. Coco. I blinked. Coco? Behind the dog, Sarah stepped in. She was wearing her black work uniform, her hair tied back in a messy bun. She looked tired, stripped of makeup, her face pale. And behind her was Mark. He was wearing clean jeans and a plain t-shirt. He held a helmet in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. "How did you know?" "Arthur called us," Mark said. "He shouldn't have," I said bitterly. "I don't have any money left to give you. It's all in the building." "We know," Sarah said softly. She picked up Coco and sat on the edge of the bed. "We didn't come for money, Mum." "Then why?" Mark stepped forward. He placed the clipboard on the bedside table. "I reviewed the vendor contracts for the opening," Mark said. "The caterer was going to overcharge you for the wine. I renegotiated it this morning. Saved you $2,000. I stared at him. You went to the house?" "Yeah," Mark said. "Arthur let me in. I checked the HVAC system too. Fine. Russo didn't calibrate the thermostats. I fixed it. And I organised the linens," Sarah added. "The housekeeping staff. They didn't know how to fold the napkins properly. For a grand opening, I showed them, the way you taught me." I looked from one to the other. "Why?" I asked again. My voice cracked. Mark looked at Sarah. Sarah nodded. "Because it's your dream," Mark said. "And because we saw the name of the place. The Sterling House. It's our name too," Sarah whispered, "even if we didn't live up to it." Mark took a step closer. He looked at my frail hand resting on the white sheet. He hesitated, then reached out and covered it with his own. His hand was calloused now, rough, warm. "You can't be there tomorrow," Mark said. "Dr. Evans told us." "So cancel it," I said. "No," Mark said firmly. "We don't cancel. We execute." "Who?" "Us," Mark said. "I can manage the facility, Mum. I know the numbers. I know the building codes now. I know how to spot a liar because I was one. And I can handle the residents," Sarah said. "I can make them feel seen, like I wanted to be seen." "You want jobs?" I asked skeptically. "You want me to hire you?" "No," Mark shook his head. "We don't want salaries. We want a chance to pay back the rent." "The rent?" "The emotional rent," Mark said. "For the years we took." I looked at them. They weren't asking for a handout. They were asking for work. Hard work. "Arthur!" I called out. Arthur appeared in the doorway. He had been listening the whole time. A small smile played on his lips. "Is the paperwork ready?" I asked. "I took the liberty of drafting some employment contracts," Arthur said. "Probationary period, 6 months. Salary, minimum wage. Duties. Everything. The director says." "No," I said. Mark and Sarah's faces fell. "Salary is 0, I said. For the first month. You work for room and board. There are 2 staff apartments on the 3rd floor. Small ones, smaller than the penthouse closet." Mark smiled. It was a genuine smile. "Sounds luxurious." "And," I added, looking at Sarah, "Coco stays. The residents will like a therapy dog." Sarah burst into tears. She buried her face in the dog's fur. "But tomorrow," I said, trying to sit up again. "Tomorrow is the opening. I need to give the speech." "We set up a video link," Mark said. "We put a big screen in the garden. You can give the speech from here. We'll be there to cut the ribbon for you." I lay back against the pillows. The tightness in my chest eased. The band loosened. "Okay," I whispered. Okay. Sunday. The grand opening. I sat in my hospital bed, propped up by pillows, wearing my floral dress. A camera was pointed at me. On the TV screen in my room, I saw the live feed from the Sterling house. The garden was packed. There were future residents, town officials, and yes, even the neighbours. Martha Gable was there, holding a plate of cookies. Mark and Sarah stood on the porch. They looked nervous but proud. They stood straight. Arthur walked to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "the founder of the Sterling house, Mrs. Anna Sterling." I looked into the camera lens. "Hello, everyone," I said. My voice was amplified through the speakers in the garden. I saw the crowd look up at the screen. "I built this house because I learned a hard lesson," I said. "I learned that a home isn't bricks and mortar. It isn't expensive furniture or a view from the 40th floor." I paused. I saw Mark reach out and hold Sarah's hand. "A home is a place where you are safe," I continued, "where you are forgiven, and where, no matter how far you stray, the door is always unlocked, as long as you are willing to wipe your feet before you come in." The crowd laughed. Mark and Sarah smiled. "Welcome to the Sterling house," I said. "Welcome home." On the screen, I watched Mark and Sarah pick up the giant scissors. Snip. The red ribbon fell. The crowd cheered. Mark looked directly at the camera. He mouthed 2 words: "Thank you." I closed my eyes. The monitor beeped steadily, a calm, rhythmic rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. It sounded like a clock, but not a clock counting down. A clock starting over. Time is a funny thing. When you are suffering, a week feels like a decade. When you are building, a year feels like a blink of an eye. It has been 12 months since the ribbon was cut. 12 months since the Sterling house opened its doors. I am sitting on the wraparound porch in a wicker rocking chair. The summer breeze carries the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. My legs are covered by a light blue blanket, knitted by Sarah, though she dropped a few stitches here and there. I am no longer the director. I am no longer the landlady. I am resident number 1. I sip my lemonade and watch the world I created. In the garden, Mrs. Higgins, my old roommate from the dark days, is holding court. She is sitting in her motorised wheelchair, an upgrade paid for by the facility, smoking a contraband cigarette she thinks I don't see. She is telling a story to a group of new residents, her hands waving wildly, and there, kneeling beside a flower bed, is Sarah. She is wearing gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed straw hat. She is laughing. A real laugh. Not the tinkling, fake laugh she used to practice for cocktail parties. This is a belly laugh, loud and unrefined. She is helping Mr. Henderson, a retired carpenter with shaking hands, to plant marigolds. "Deep roots, Mr. Henderson," I hear her say. "We have to plant them deep so the wind won't blow them away." Deep roots. A year ago, Sarah didn't know a root from a stem. A year ago, she only cared about things that bloomed quickly and died young. The front gate opens. A van pulls in. Sterling Shuttle is painted on the side. The driver hops out. It's Mark. He walks with a clipboard in his hand, checking off inventory. He is wearing a polo shirt with the company logo. He has gained a little weight, the healthy kind. He doesn't look like a starving wolf anymore. He looks like a bear. Solid, protective. He sees me on the porch. He waves. "Afternoon, Mom," he calls out. "The fresh produce delivery is here. We got the peaches you wanted." "Are they ripe?" I call back. "Soft as butter," he promises. He disappears into the kitchen entrance, whistling. I lean back in my chair. The wood creaks rhythmically. Crack! Thud. Crack! Thud. It is the sound of peace. Later that afternoon, Arthur arrived. It was our monthly board meeting. We held it in the small library, surrounded by the smell of old paper and lemon polish. Arthur placed the ledger on the table. "We are in the black," Arthur announced. "The waiting list for a room is 6 months long. The state inspector gave us a perfect score. He actually asked Mark for advice on updating the fire safety protocols for other facilities." "Mark likes protocols," I said, smiling. "He likes order. It quiets his mind. And the finances," Arthur continued, lowering his voice, "the Phoenix Trust. With the sale of the penthouse and the wise investments we made, the capital has grown. It's sitting at nearly $6 million. I looked at the number on the page. 6 million. "It's time," I said. Arthur looked up over his spectacles. "Time for what?" "Time to test the foundation," I said. "Call them in." Arthur nodded. He went to the door and signalled. Mark and Sarah came in. They looked a bit nervous. Board meetings usually meant trouble, a broken boiler or a budget dispute. They sat down opposite me, just like they had in the penthouse a year ago, but this time the table wasn't polished mahogany, it was simple oak, and there was no eviction notice. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked, wiping dirt from her cheek. "Did Mrs. Higgins set off the smoke alarm again?" "Mrs. Higgins is fine," I said. "We are here to talk about the future." I slid the ledger toward them. "The Sterling house is profitable," I said. "The trust is healthy. $6 million. Mark looked at the number. He didn't blink. He didn't lick his lips. He just nodded. "That's good," Mark said. "That means we can fix the roof on the west wing next year and maybe upgrade the kitchen equipment and hire a night nurse," as Sarah added. "Maria is working too many shifts." I exchanged a look with Arthur. "This money," I said slowly, "is the family inheritance. It belongs to the trust. As the trustee, I have the power to distribute it." I paused. The air in the room grew still. "I am old," I said. "I am tired. I don't need $6 million. I have a room, a bed, and peaches." I looked at them. "I am offering to liquidate the trust. I can cut you a check today. 3 million each. You can take it. You can leave this job. You can buy a new penthouse. You can buy the watches and the bags and the cars." Mark stared at me. Sarah stopped fidgeting. "You are free," I said. "The eviction is over. The penance is paid. Do you want the money?" The silence stretched. I watched their faces. I watched for the flicker of greed. I watched for the old Mark and Sarah to surface. Sarah looked down at her hands. Her fingernails were short, unpolished, and stained with soil. She rubbed her thumb over a callus on her palm. "I saw a bag the other day," Sarah said softly. "In a magazine, a Birkin. Orange. Beautiful." My heart tightened. "And?" I asked. "And I looked at the price," Sarah said. $12,000. And I thought, that's 3 months of insulin for Mrs. Gable. That's a new garden gazebo for the residents. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. "I can't carry a bag like that anymore, Mom. It would feel too heavy." I turned to Mark. "And you?" I asked. 3 million, Mark. You could start a new firm. You could be the crypto king again." Mark laughed. It was a soft, dry chuckle. "The king is dead," he said. "Long live the director." He pushed the ledger back toward me. "Keep it," Mark said. "Or rather, keep it in the house. Put it into the endowment. Secure this place for the next 50 years. I don't want the cash." "You don't?" "Mum," Mark said, leaning forward, "do you remember when I was trading? I checked my phone 200 times a day. I didn't sleep. I didn't taste my food. I was rich, but I was starving. He gestured to the window, to the garden outside. Yesterday, I fixed a leaky faucet for Mr. Henderson. He shook my hand. He called me a good man. That felt better than any dividend check I ever cashed. He looked me in the eye. We don't want the money. We have a job. We have a home. That's enough. I let out a breath. It was a long, shuddering sigh. The final weight on my shoulders, the fear that they were only pretending, vanished. I looked at Arthur. He was smiling so hard I thought his face might crack. Well, Arthur said, clearing his throat, it seems the board is unanimous. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a set of keys. They weren't the keys to a car. They weren't the keys to a safe deposit box. They were the master keys to the Sterling house. I'm retiring, I said. Officially. I want to spend my days reading and knitting bad scarves. I slid the keys across the table. Mark, you are the executive director. Sarah, you are the head of operations. The salary is, well, let's say it's substantially better than minimum wage now, but the responsibility is total. Mark took the keys. His hand closed over them. We won't let you down, he promised. I know, I said. You already haven't. That evening, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and burnt orange. I sat on the porch again. The residents were inside, having dinner. I could hear the clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation. Sarah came out, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to me and sat in the rocker next to mine. Mum? She asked. Yes, dear. Do you ever miss it? The old house, the old life. I took a sip of tea. I thought about the Victorian mansion with its draughty halls and the grandfather clock. I miss the memories, I said, but a house is just a container, Sarah, like a vase. The vase doesn't matter. It's the flowers you put inside that make it beautiful. Mark stepped out onto the porch. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the street. A delivery truck just pulled up, he said. It's late. I ordered it, I said. What is it? A final touch. 2 men walked up the path, carrying a large, heavy object wrapped in a moving blanket. They brought it up the steps. Where do you want it, ma'am? One of them asked. Right there, I pointed to the wall next to the front door, where everyone can see it. They unwrapped it. It was the mirror. My gold, Victorian mirror. The one Arthur had recovered from the penthouse before we sold it. The one Mark and Sarah had kept when they threw everything else away. Mark stared at it. You kept it. It saw us at our worst, I said. It saw the lies. It saw the eviction. It saw the empty penthouse. I stood up, leaning on my cane. I walked over to the mirror. I looked at our reflections. I saw an old woman with white hair and a spine of steel. I saw a man with dirt on his boots and peace in his eyes. I saw a woman with a sun hat and a heart that had finally thawed. Now, I said, touching the glass, it will see us at our best. I turned to them. 1 year ago, I said softly, you tricked me into leaving my home for just a week. You thought it was the end of my story. I smiled. You were wrong. It was just the prologue. Mark put his arm around Sarah. They looked at me and then at the mirror. We're home, Mum, Mark said. Yes, I whispered. We are. I sat back down in my rocker. I closed my eyes. The wind rustled the leaves of the new oak trees we had planted. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It wasn't a clock this time. It was the rhythm of the rocking chair. It was the rhythm of a life that had been broken apart and put back together. Not perfect, not seamless, but stronger in the broken places. I listened to the laughter coming from inside the house. I smiled. The landlady had retired. The eviction notice was history. And Anna Sterling, she was just resting. Her work was done. It was a soft, dry chuckle. The king is dead, he said. Long live the director. He pushed the ledger back toward me. Keep it, Mark said, or rather, keep it in the house. Put it into the endowment. Should secure this place for the next 50 years. I don't want the cash. You don't? Mum, Mark said, leaning forward. Do you remember when I was trading? I checked my phone 200 times a day. I didn't sleep. I didn't taste my food. I was rich, but I was starving. He gestured to the window, to the garden outside. Yesterday, I fixed a leaky faucet for Mr. Henderson. He shook my hand. He called me a good man. That felt better than any dividend check I ever cashed. He looked me in the eye. We don't want the money. We have a job. We have a home. That's enough. I let out a breath. It was a long, shuddering sigh. The final weight on my shoulders, the fear that they were only pretending, vanished. I looked at Arthur. He was smiling so hard I thought his face might crack. Well, Arthur said, clearing his throat. It seems the board is unanimous. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a set of keys. They weren't the keys to a car. They weren't the keys to a safe deposit box. They were the master keys to the Sterling house. I'm retiring, I said. Officially, I want to spend my days reading and knitting bad scarves. I slid the keys across the table. Mark, you are the executive director. Sarah, you are the head of operations. The salary is, well, let's say it's substantially better than minimum wage now. But the responsibility is total. Mark took the keys. His hand closed over them. We won't let you down, he promised. I know, I said. You already haven't. That evening the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and burnt orange. I sat on the porch again. The residents were inside, having dinner. I could hear the clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation. Sarah came out holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to me and sat in the rocker next to mine. Mum? She asked. Yes, dear. Do you ever miss it? The old house? The old life? I took a sip of tea. I thought about the Victorian mansion with its draughty halls and the grandfather clock. I miss the memories, I said. But a house is just a container, Sarah. Like a vase. The vase doesn't matter. It's the flowers you put inside that make it beautiful. Mark stepped out onto the porch. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the street. A delivery truck just pulled up, he said. It's late. I ordered it, I said. What is it? A final touch. 2 men walked up the path, carrying a large, heavy object wrapped in a moving blanket. They brought it up the steps. Where do you want it, ma'am? One of them asked. Right there, I pointed to the wall next to the front door, where everyone can see it. They unwrapped it. It was the mirror. My gold Victorian mirror. The one Arthur had recovered from the penthouse before we sold it. The one Mark and Sarah had kept when they threw everything else away. Mark stared at it. You kept it. It saw us at our worst, I said. It saw the lies. It saw the eviction. It saw the empty penthouse. I stood up, leaning on my cane. I walked over to the mirror. I looked at our reflections. I saw an old woman with white hair and a spine of steel. I saw a man with dirt on his boots and peace in his eyes. I saw a woman with a sun hat and a heart that had finally thawed. Now, I said, touching the glass, it will see us at our best. I turned to them. 1 year ago, I said softly, you tricked me into leaving my home for just a week. You thought it was the end of my story. I smiled. You were wrong. It was just the prologue. Mark put his arm around Sarah. They looked at me and then at the mirror. We're home, Mum, Mark said. Yes, I whispered. We are. I sat back down in my rocker. I closed my eyes. The wind rustled the leaves of the new oak trees we had planted. Tick, tock, tock. It wasn't a clock this time. It was the rhythm of the rocking chair. It was the rhythm of a life that had been broken apart and put back together, not perfect, not seamless, but stronger in the broken places. I listened to the laughter coming from inside the house. I smiled. The landlady had retired. The eviction notice was history. And Anna Sterling, she was just resting. Her work was done.